All right, committee members, welcome back from our lunch recess. We are live. Treasurer Meyer, we are live. There will be order. Point of order. Treasurer Meyer. We are back from our lunch recess. The time is 12:34. We have a really big afternoon ahead of us. We are on our 10 a.m. agenda item.
Really?
Really. So we need to get cracking here with Fury. If I could get everybody on task, could get the treasurer on task, that would be most helpful. Treasurer, if you recall, you are sitting in the hot seat.
I'll get right back.
And we are engaging in discussion regarding 26 LSO 119. Representative Wasserberger had asked some questions, and so now we're back on the committee for additional discussion or questions to the treasurer concerning 26 119. Seeing no further questions from the committee to Treasurer Meyer, we will switch to additional public comment.
You have a current graph that Representative Nicholas wanted to see that, so he has a graphic representation. You also have the exponential formula, so you know when I say exponential growth, there's actually a formula.
All right, thank you, Treasurer Meyer. Representative Nicholas, does this answer your questions pictographically? Do you appreciate the graph? Do you want to talk about the graph? Again, committee members, any further questions to Treasurer Meyer on 26 LSO 119? Seeing none, further public comment. Representative Storer.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm just curious, I think it would be extremely helpful to be able to chart this over time with the assumptions that you suggested this morning. You know, in terms of like what it would look like with different amounts at different on an annual basis and what we can expect as a return, and then see how that works, especially in the years, you know, 31 and moving forward. Because I think that would give us all more of a comfort of understanding what we will then require the state to pay out from the fund. That would certainly help me.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, if you'll leave, the charts, the first one is 100 million at 10%. And after 30 years, it's 1.744 billion. And the second one starts at $1 billion. So the assumption is that you're going to strip off $744 million, and the legislature is going to essentially appropriate it, you know, in a manner that they see fit 30 years from now, as far as what things that need to be done. And then the $1 billion is reinvested at 9%. And then you get a little over $13 billion at that. And then at that point in time, the legislature will make a determination that they'll distribute anywhere from half of it to 62.5%, or keep half of it and distribute half of it. And so, or anything in between that 37.5%, 50%. So if there are certain years where you have, you know, where you're going to need more money, they have the option to actually draw more money out on that. And if they don't need the money, they have the option to save it. So it gives them some flexibility in the future years. Because, you know, I got a crystal ball, but I think that they need some flexibility. Does that help?
On predicting the future, Representative Storer.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I understand that, but I think that the way the bill reads, we're restricting them to what was made in the year 30 years back. And that is a different number.
It's supposed to be the total. It's not like you distribute in 30 years time the return that they had in year one. You essentially aggregate all that across the pool, and all of these are not in individual pools, they're in a separate pool with all 30 years combined. So that gives you some diversification in the mid part of that. So you actually had diversification in the pool, and then we can proportionally attribute the amount of money that's been made in that pool over that 30-year time period. So that the average assumption at 10% is actually 2.5 percentage points less than we're making on our privates in our first 6 years. So we discounted, our expectations by 25%.
All right, any further questions for the treasurer? All right, seeing none,
Okay.
having already called on public comment, seeing none, public comment is closed. Committee, back to you. Representative Nicholas.
Madam Chair, I have a proposed motion. So I think all of us are intrigued and desirous, at least that's my perception, of having some type of a generational fund and putting it together. My biggest problem is that I don't think this bill is crafted, or the statutory one is ready for prime time. And we could literally have this in front of us through the entire next biennium or the next year to work this thing down to something that is going to present the results that that are desired, and to have a bill that we're all completely comfortable with and that we fully understand. I also understand that we're in a hurry, because the sooner we do it, the more money we make. So I would propose that we create a working group that can meet between now and February to take the statutory bill and the constitutional resolution bill, kind of marry them together, but put them together in something that I think is our work product, that we're comfortable with and we can explain, and that we think that we'll get the job done. I think that working group should also look at sources of revenue and where the money's going to come from. And it's not likely to be a regular amount of money, or there are ways to do it, but it will mean tapping money from elsewhere to get it. But I think we have to work on all those things combined. And it's going to take some folks that are willing to, put in a day, a month at least between now and February. And then when that first day or two of session, we can have Cap Fin come back, and we'll be able to present the revised draft bills. In the meantime, we'll be circulating all our drafts to this committee, to the treasurer's office, and to whomever we want to get to where we want to go, so that we have something that is real and substantive, and that we can get full support on by the time we're in the budget session in February. That's my motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Senator Guru. Further discussion? Representative Bear.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I don't think there's going to be many arguments on this in this body as to the value of a compounding investment. I think the challenge really becomes selling this to the public, let alone the legislature on the floor in this next session. So I agree with Representative Nicholas's sentiments about putting together a product that we can represent well on the floor. I'm not sure we can get there. Even if we did get the legislature there, I don't think we can get the public to the point where they're willing to tell us to take $100 million out of our spending, not send it back to them, but to put it into savings, even though this is a brilliant way of doing your savings and investing. So I think we've got a really big hurdle here to make this thing work. Having said that, I'm not opposed to giving it to the voters. If the treasurer can somehow sell it to the voters, it would make it clear to all of us, because there's a debate in the legislature today as whether the public wants us to put more money into investments and savings versus giving it back to the taxpayers. So I will be voting for advancing the voters initiative, or the not voters initiative, but the resolution. I see the challenges. I'm not volunteering, Madam Chairman, for any subcommittee. And I don't know that that's really going to be that helpful at this point, but I appreciate the treasurer's work, and I'll support getting this to the floor. Not sure I'll support it there, but in general, I like giving the voters an opportunity to tell us clearly what it is that they want.
We are in open motion. We don't take comment unless there's a question we need answered as a subject matter expert. So no opinions at this time, Treasurer. Thank you. Senator Crum. Senator Crum.
Madam Chairman, thank you. I am fully in support of this concept of compounding interest, saving for the future in 30 years. The gift that we give this state is phenomenal. And I do believe, maybe a little bit different than my good friend, Representative Bear, that I do think the voters would do it. I think it's absolutely the way to do it, is take it to the voters to tell us whether they like this or not. I'm maybe just a little bit on the other side of the fence. I'm optimistic that the voters would see the value in the long-term savings and the gift that we would give our children and grandchildren. Thank you.
Further discussion on a working group as opposed to moving this bill forward at this time. Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I look at this as, potentially an amazing accomplishment. But I have several philosophical misgivings. And until I can satisfy them, I'm going to stay a no.
Further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, Representative Bear?
I just want to clarify that we are voting on
Right.
creating a task force, not advancing the bill.
So for clarity, Representative Nicholas asked for a working group, not a task force. So that would be a handful of members from this committee, Treasurer's Office, LSO staff, to refine this proposed concept and bill draft. You're not voting on 26 LSO 119. You are voting on essentially tabling 26 LSO 119 in lieu of a working group to continue to advance the bill forward. Further discussion, Representative Nicholas.
My only discussion is I think that Representative Bear should be on the task force with me.
Yeah, this is a working group.
Well, I might want to amend the motion because it would be nice that that it gets compensated. So whichever the right terminology is for our time.
Yeah, so you would like an official subcommittee so that the legislators working on the matter would get compensated through our LSO budget. That is supported by the second, Senator Garreau?
Yes.
That is a friendly amendment. Further discussion? Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question would be for the good representative. What does this task force, this subcommittee look like? How many members, how involved is that?
Representative Nicholas? How much do you
So,
want?
Madam Chair, that's obviously the discretion once we create it. But at a minimum, I would think it would be 3 House members, 2 or 3 senators. And then if we want folks to attend or be part of it, we can do that informally or formally, but obviously we'd had contributions from the Treasurer's Office, from LSO, and whomever else, other expertise, but we may want to engage.
Raise your hand if you're interested, committee, in serving on this working group.
Who's missing? That's the other House member that gets to be on.
Yeah. So does that help clarify? Is everyone ready to vote?
Conspicuous absence.
All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, say no.
No.
That motion has passed. So that is in addition to Senate File 121. And so those two topics and bill drafts are tied to each other. So that matter, our number 4 item agenda is complete, and we are now moving on to item number 5. Representative Bear.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a point of clarification on the last one. Is it in our budget to do a subcommittee, or do we need to go to Management Council for that?
It's likely within our budget because I always operate on time and under budget.
Madam Chairman,
So,
I'll ask one additional question.
Mr. Shaw?
I'm just wondering, can you clarify then, have you set the membership on that subcommittee and who was it that volunteered?
So the membership has not been set yet. Based on, we're missing a couple members here this afternoon. I think Representative Harrelson, though, has been identified of having interest. Representative Nicholas, Representative Storer, Senators Crum, Guru, and Driscoll. All right. So we're on our 11 a.m. agenda item, meeting updates. Senate File 96, the Wyoming Gold Act. Welcome, Mr. LeBlanc.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Norman LeBlanc. I'm the interim chief investment officer at the State Treasurer's Office. And I have with me my colleagues, Kyle Parnell and Andrew Spade, both SCO analysts who did much of the work on this project. I'm going to be very brief so that we can hope to get back on schedule. The State Treasurer's Office is on target to meet our January 1, 2026 statutory target to invest in species. So again, we are on target to meet our date. The due diligence has been conducted in 3 segments: acquisition, transportation, and storage. That due diligence and price discovery began in March and is now essentially complete. We are ready to make final decisions and get in a position to make those purchases by January 1, 2026, as per the statute. So I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question, Madam Chair, is that I'm curious what your investigation is, what it has taught you in terms of cost, where would it be located, and how it would be located. I mean, are we going to have Fort Knox and Casper, or can we do it at a sitting facility? And what are those costs, and how did you go about that process?
Madam
Mr.
Chair,
LeBlanc?
Representative Nicholas, from the perspective of acquisition, we reached out to 3 large institutional counterparties. These are all major global institutions that you would recognize. And we have identified the provider with the most competitive fee structure, and we would expect to execute with them. With regard to transportation, this is a cost tied up with the storage decision, which I'll get to in just a second. And in short, we would pay a one-time cost of $9,650 if we transport the specie to Wyoming for storage. We would pay nothing if we left it in New York. We are negotiating at the moment with a highly regarded global leader in secure transportation of cash and valuables in the case that we decide to store in Wyoming. With regard to the question of storage, we developed and researched 2 options: New York storage with a high credit quality global institution, and a Wyoming-based storage based in Casper. We performed due diligence on the Wyoming option, including multiple communications, both written and verbal, an on-site visit by my 2 colleagues, and an external party performed background checks. Those background checks revealed no adverse findings. The New York-based provider has been a highly trusted partner of the state for many years, so we know them. We didn't do any additional due diligence there. So we've negotiated with both of those storage providers, again, the New York provider and the Wyoming provider. And over every time frame, if you include transportation, the Wyoming option is marginally more expensive. Over a 5-year time frame, we would expect to pay approximately $13,000 more in aggregate to transport and store in Wyoming. Of course, there are ancillary benefits that may accrue to the state by dealing with a secure facility located in physical proximity within an opportunity zone in Wyoming. And as a public purpose investment, we could consider those benefits. So that's where we are. Those are the decisions before us. We have to finalize the selection of the acquisition counterparty. As I said, we've identified them. It's just formalizing that. We have to select our storage solution. We have all the facts before us. We're just finalizing that decision. We have to make a final decision on buying gold or some combination of gold and silver. Again, we have all the facts and figures in front of us. We just have to finalize that. And then we're about ready to go.
Well, so with that regard, I mean, you don't have to buy it all at once. So, and how many transport occasions are you planning on? Are you going to buy it all at once and hold? And if we decide to buy more, or if we want to sell, what's all of those things obviously have
could get
costs associated with them.
A detailed map, including exit and on-ramps.
Madam Chair, I can get the Google map if you'd like. Some of my friends from South Boston would like to know where that truck is going. But Representative Nicholas, to answer your question, our expectation is that we would have one transport, that we would do one purchase. This is $10 million. It's substantial, but it's barely a round lot, as we would say in the market. And so we would expect to buy it once. We would expect to transport it once, and that obviously is most efficient from a cost perspective, and then store it wherever it is going to be stored, whether it is New York or Wyoming. With regard to purchasing additional right now, the legislature has passed a statute which requires us to invest 10 million. That's what we expect to do. There is nothing else that directs us to buy additional gold. Our view as the state treasurer's office is that while gold is a very good tactical investment, perhaps buying at the top right now might not be the wisest choice, but that's what we will do as we're directed to. But it is not an investment. It is not a long-term investment. And so we would intend to buy the 10 million as directed, and then we would intend to store that 10 million and continue to hold it. If we were looking to have further liquidity so that we could buy and sell more effectively, then our decision as to where we would store it would be impacted by that, because there's clearly more liquidity if it remains in New York.
So
Representative,
follow-up.
follow-up.
So is the Casper facility doors open? They don't have to do anything. We could buy it tomorrow and deliver on Tuesday next week.
Mr.
Madam
LeBlanc?
Chair, Representative Nicholas, the Casper facility is currently functional. It currently stores precious metals for other entities. It has passed its audits. It is still being enhanced, and there will be further enhancements to security that they expect to finish by the end of the year. But it is open for business, and it has passed its first audits.
One more follow-up. Is there a time frame statutorily that you need to act to purchase?
Mr. LeBlanc?
Madam Chair, Representative Nicholas, my understanding is that it is effective January 1, 2026, and it would be, and my expectation is it was the intent of the legislature to get that done and make that happen. And so it is our expectation that we will do so.
Thank you. So, Madam Chair,
Representative
if I might
Nicholas?
comment now, it seems to me that if we're going to buy and hold gold, that we ought to at least have the option and the likelihood of trading it and exchanging in specie. And so it makes a heck of a lot more sense to have that option available, that we store it
New York.
in a location that facilitates that ability. Thank you.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Madam Chair, I just want to be clear on a response that I gave, because from what Representative Nicholas has said, something may have been misconstrued. It is more liquid, in my opinion, if we store in New York. It is not to say that there is not some liquidity storing in Wyoming. There are counterparties who will trade with a storage in Wyoming. And so there is some liquidity. There is simply more liquidity in New York because New York is connected to COMEX, which is the futures market. And that's where a lot of the activity takes place, and it is easier to transfer there. That is not to say it can't be done in Casper. It can, and it can be done with some fluidity. It just is more in when you are located in the center of that trade.
Thank you.
Further comments on $10 million of gold in Casper, Wyoming? No doubt that's where we're going.
I await final decisions.
It is an interesting conundrum, and this is my commentary on forcing the treasurer's office to make a decision that, but for the statutory protection, would arguably be in violation of their fiduciary duty to maximize returns for the people of Wyoming. That is all. Thank you, Mr. LeBlanc. I certainly will. We'll now move on to 2025 Senate File 191, State Funds Proxy Voting and Pecuniary Investments. Welcome, Mr. Keefe.
Good morning, Madam Chair, or good afternoon, I should say. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Josh Keefe, I'm the Investment Operations Manager at the Wyoming Retirement System. And in the spirit of keeping things quick, I will give you the update since our last meeting on June 12th in regards to Senate File 191 and the proxy voting process. So the RFP has closed on June 27th. We received 3 bids from ISS, which is Institutional Shareholder Services, Egan Jones, and Broadridge. Those proposals were all reviewed and scored according to the state RFP process, and ultimately the committee decided to choose ISS. And so as we speak right now, the contract is being negotiated, and we're hoping to have that in place by the end of the month. And so in addition to that, you'll notice at the bottom of the memo, I talked a little bit about a web page. The web page has been created. It's on the Wyoming Retirement website currently right now, basically just as an informational page. One of the struggles, I think, is I was trying to communicate what proxy voting is exactly in lay terms so that our members at the retirement system, if they're so inclined, can go there and see what this is and what it means. So that is currently up on the webpage, and that webpage will continue to be developed as the contract is negotiated and finalized and all of those things. And so that is page 2 in the packet that you received from us. And then page 3 is just an example of what a proxy voting report would look like. It's a fictitious company. It's not a real company in there. That came directly off of the ISS demo that was given to the staff. And so just for your reference, if you're curious what this will look like, that is an accurate description. So long story short, we're making good progress. I think we're on pace to get it done in a reasonable amount of time. And I welcome any questions.
Madam Chair.
Representative Nicholas.
What's it going to cost?
So the bids came back, they were kind of wide ranging. The highest was twice the amount of the low one. But the ISS contract it's $136,000 a year. If you sign a 5-year deal, it's $125,000 a year.
Yep. And Madam Chair, if I might address part of that as well. Sam Masudi, CIO, Wyoming Retirement System, and Representative Nicholas, we might have to make some custom adjustments to that, which will cost more above the base price. But we'll know more in the next month or so.
Thank you.
Senator Guru.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you for that testimony. And I was reading your packet, and I went to what you referred to as what is on your webpage about proxy voting. If you would turn your attention to that, I noticed at the bottom of that page, there's an asterisk and it says, WRS asks for all proxy votes that are cast in the best financial interest of the pension fund, meaning what decision/vote will give the greatest return on investment, ROI, for the pension fund and its members. Since this is a report about 191 and what it meant, and I know what it meant when it left the Senate, I want to make sure that you understand what 191 means, what was signed by the governor, and what our intent was and how it relates to that statement. Could you elaborate, please?
Sure. Madam Chair, Senator Guru, yes, we will make sure that we've actually already changed the language on the webpage this morning. And so it now says that WS requires that all proxy votes And so I think we will make sure that we stay with the intent of Senate File 91 as well as all of the legal, so we don't get ourselves in trouble, basically. So.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Senator Guru, and I think the idea of this was that it would be understandable to lay people. So just generally explaining sort of what this means without getting into a lot of technicalities. But yeah, we can certainly adjust that to make it more clear.
Yes, there was a lot of controversy about that, and the good president and I went back and forth on it, and like usual, he won. But so I want to, but what I want to do is make sure that we follow the intent of the law, because whether I agree with it or not is now immaterial to the point. It's now the law of the state, and so we're going to follow it. But in addition, what I'll be looking for too, and this is as I look across to the treasurer, because I know he's worked really hard on establishing language on the treasurer side of this as well. When we do these votes, and when we vote our proxies, and if we're going to vote to make sure that we are following a more philosophical bent on this, I'd also like to see us, because I think it's fair to ask, what is the cost of doing that? In other words, there's an opportunity cost when we vote our conscience versus when we vote to just make money. And so I want to make sure that every member of this committee knows what the cost of those votes are, and as best we can, because I know it's an estimation. Wouldn't you agree with a statement like that?
Madam Chair, Senator Guru, absolutely. Right, we'll be tracking that, and as we go through this process, we'll get more information and get a better sense of the opportunity cost. But yes, I do agree with you.
Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. How long, first couple questions. First of all, ISS obviously kind of was the leader in this whole ESG mess, which led to this bill even being proposed and passed into law. So my first question on ISS is, hopefully they understand what our law is and what our intent is. Does the contract, how long is the contract, number one? Number two, is there a trigger mechanism in the contract to be able to fire them if they're not living up to their end of the deal? What kind of conversations were had with ISS about their public stance on ESG is widely known. And it's contrary to Wyoming's interests in most of the cases when it comes to fossil fuels and other investments. That's just the environmental side. Then you have the whole social stuff that obviously is different than Wyoming's values. So what were those conversations like with ISS? And I'll stand for any follow-ups. Thank you.
Mr. Masadi.
Madam Chair, Senator Beitman, so I may lose track of some of those questions, but in general, ISS is one of the largest providers, is really a scale business. So there are only a few companies that do it, and ISS is used by Treasury as well. And one of the steps of our process for the contract is we're trying to mirror their contract as close as possible. And as a large company, they provide a number of services to different clients. So they have a menu of different selections that we can make. So we're going to select the menu that's closest to fulfilling Senate File 191. And if there need to be any tweaks, we'll make those. So there might be a minor cost of that. And in terms of some of the specifics of the contract, yeah, they would be responsible for voting according to instructions. And if they don't, presumably we would be able to cancel. And I think regardless, there are probably a number of ways to cancel at our discretion.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So a few things here. First of all, opportunity cost. There's obviously an opportunity cost of not making investments based on pecuniary choice. So wouldn't you agree to that? Moving on, though, there is in-house Senate File 191. There were 2 full-time employees authorized. I'd just like to know, have they been hired? What are they doing? How's that going with those 2 employees? And I think I'll just leave it at that, you know.
Madam Chair, Representative Bear, we will not be hiring any additional employees for this. We think that we can structure a contract with ISS that they'll be able to fulfill most of the work. So it'll just involve part of Josh's time, which might be substantial, but he can handle with his current workload.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. That is great news. Appreciate that. Appreciate your work, Mr. Keefe, and trying to keep this in-house. One last question. It was mentioned that the Treasurer's Office uses this, and they are already up on their website and have the reports available. Is there any, in your mind, when this gets up and going, will there be any substantial difference in the way these reports look? For instance, this example you've given us versus what we're seeing on the Treasurer's site?
Madam Chairman, Representative Bear, I don't expect a vast difference. I'm trying to also keep in mind that we keep it consistent with what the Treasury is currently displaying in regards to how they display their reports. Also, one of the things that I've learned that I didn't know through all of this is that, we have to be ADA compliant and make sure people with disabilities can read these reports and different things like that as well. So we'll make sure that we abide by those in addition to, again, following the intent of 191. So.
Any additional questions on Senate File 191? Representative Storr?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Mr. Masudi, I'm curious if there are identified pecuniary factors that are based on an environmental outcome. How would you instruct ISS to regard that?
Madam Chair, Representative Storr, we would have to see what those are and what the circumstances are, and if they were truly related to a certain cost or benefit to the company. So we would have to see what the recommendation was and what the rationale for that would be.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I noticed in the example given of ISS of the report, a number of the proxy votes are about personnel, electing or re-electing directors, compensation policy, employment terms. How do you determine what is in the pecuniary interests of the investments for those kinds of things?
Madam Chair, Representative Storr, yeah, that's a great question. And that's an area where we really rely on some of the guidance from ISS in terms of what is appropriate compensation and whether management is requesting too high of compensation or recommending other changes that benefit them but aren't in the benefit or do not benefit shareholders. So we expect them to provide recommendations on that. That's probably where there would be most disagreement with management.
I'll tack onto that with a question of, does ISS vet these potential board members, like in the case of Exxon, where they put on known environmentalists that were anti-fossil fuels to the board of Exxon. Is ISS going to provide that kind of research and recommendations as to vetting some of these people so we don't have to, so we are looking out for our state's best interest and not engaging in this kind of corporate rating that we've seen with ESG over the years and hostile takeover, or not quite hostile takeovers of corporate boards like Exxon, but you get where I'm going with this.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Senator Biden, yes, based on our voting selection, our voting menu, they aren't going to recommend directors who are opposed to the company's business like that. That wouldn't make any sense. They wouldn't be able to justify that.
Right. Recently, we just saw what Cracker Barrel did. They blew their foot off because of diversity, equity, inclusion. The ESG stuff came and bid another company. If we were invested in that company, that ESG policy would cause that company's stock to crater, which it did, and it would hurt the state of Wyoming's investments. So can I sleep at night knowing that we will be protected from foolishness like that going forward with this bill?
Madam Chair, Senator Beitman, you might be referring to the issue with they changed their logo and there was some controversy over that.
To the hiring of a CEO whose, views are known to be kind of opposite of what the Cracker Barrel was all about and their tradition, and tried to take it a different direction, kind of like Bud Light. And they had a huge marketing fiasco over that. So these types of decisions in corporate governance affect the stock price, which affects us and our whole portfolio. So I want to make sure that the task we've given you guys to keep track of all this is being fulfilled, and it's not just going to be whitewashed through ISS saying, oh, they're fine, we approve, vote for them. Nothing to see here. So who's watching ISS on this stuff?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Senator Beitman. So just to be clear, so this proxy voting is that every year each public company has to have a public meeting where they allow shareholders to vote on certain categories of behavior, changes in compensation, things like that. So it wouldn't necessarily, one of those votes wouldn't necessarily relate to something like the advertising of an individual company. So we don't really have any way of controlling those types of decisions.
Lastly, Madam Chair, but you vote for board members who will hire a CEO who will approve of this kind of stuff. So that it all does tie together. It's not just, I get we don't vote on marketing campaign policies and things like that, but it's the key votes that we entrust ISS to make on our behalf, on the state of Wyoming's behalf, are the board of directors, and they in turn vote for the CEO. So if you vote for a woke board of directors, you're going to get a woke CEO and you're going to kill the stock price. So that's what we're worried about. You don't need to respond, but we can move on.
All right, any further discussion? All right, seeing none, thank you for the update. We are now going to move to House Joint Resolution 1, amending Wyoming's active admission of earnings.
Madam Chairman, I will give that update. Do you mind if I do it from here? It's
Sure
very
thing.
short.
Thanks, Mr. Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. At the last meeting, I testified that we had discussed with the congressional offices about bringing a bill that would implement our requested change to our active admission. That involves replacing references to income and interest with earnings to allow a broader investment strategy from our investment teams. They took up that cause, and on July 10th, Representative Hageman's office introduced House Rule 4328. It was immediately referred to the House Committee on Natural Resources, where it sits today. I did have a conversation about a week and a half ago with their office. They're working with the chairman now to get that bill heard, and they'll let me know as soon as that happens. So that's where we're at with that.
Mr. Shaw, questions for Mr. Shaw? Congress is working on it. We feel comforted. Yes? All right. They work, evidently. All right. So that has been at least Months and months and months. All right. We are now going to move on to our 1 o'clock item. We have made record breaking speed here. It's 1:18 PM. We have our executive director for the Gaming Commission, Mr. Laramendi. Welcome to the Capital Finance and Investments Committee. If you could introduce yourself and give us your thoughts on revenue reporting.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Nick Laramendi. I'm the Executive Director of the Wyoming Gaming Commission. Today, I have some information for you as far as the revenue reporting. If it pleases the committee, I'll break these down individually by the big three that we do, which is online sports wagering, skill-based amusement games, and then pari-mutuel wagering. And then I can stop in between those and answer any questions if that'll work for you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Online sports wagering, they are required to report the previous month's earning no later than the 15th of each month. They submit their revenues on a form provided by the commission. That form outlines the total amount of monthly wagers, less any cash winnings, non-cash winnings, voided wagers, canceled wagers, resettlements, and excise, federal excise tax. Then they're also allowed to carry a negative gross revenue from the previous month. That's only allowed to be carried over for 1 month, which gives them their adjusted monthly taxable gross revenue. That'll break down the 10% that they are required to pay the commission or remit to the commission for the prior month. They also have to submit supporting documentation for all of that. The online sports wagering folks, every month they submit updated bank statements so the commission can review their reserve accounts to ensure that the reserves that they have follow the guidelines that are set forth in the rules, and to ensure that that balance is kept at the level that it is required to be. They also submit a breakdown of all of the events that they accept wagers on and what those wagers for each event were. So the commission can go back and verify their total wagers versus every independent or individual event that they offered and accepted wagers on. They also have to fill out an attestation report verifying that it is in fact true. With online sports wagering, they go under their platforms go under rigorous lab testings. And part of the lab testing for those platforms is testing of their accounting and their internal controls. Their internal controls are submitted to the commission and reviewed and approved by the commission. Their internal controls must provide how they're going to safeguard their assets, all of the financial records of the sports wagering operators to ensure that they're accurate and reliable, how they calculate the transaction of sports wagerings. The transactions are recorded adequately to the permit. The accountability of the assets is maintained pursuant to generally accepted accounting principles. Only authorized personnel have access to these assets. The account balances are complete and accurate, and the accounts and personal identifying information are adequately protected. Furthermore, their internal controls have to be audited every other year by a third-party auditor, and the results of that audit have to be in writing and submitted to the commission, so the commission can review those audits for any sort of mishaps that they may find that we can address with them. The commission can also independently do audits of the online sports wagering operators' books anytime they see fit. All we have to do is reach out to them and let them know that they're under audit by the commission, and they are required by rule to cooperate with our compliance personnel and our auditing personnel for anything that they need for that.
Director, how much personnel do you have that are in the auditing department for the Gaming Commission?
Madam Chair, currently we have a full-time accountant and a full-time forensic auditor, 1 and 1.
And are those individuals, they have experience outside of their recent employment with the Wyoming Gaming Commission auditing online sports betting?
Madam Chair, they have, our auditor has experience in forensic auditing in general, not specific to online sports wagering, but in forensic auditing in general.
And how many audits has that forensic examiner conducted?
On the online sports wagering side, I believe we've done 1. That one's fairly new. We do audits pretty regularly on the parimutuel side and the skill-based amusement side.
So is one auditor enough in light of the rapidly growing industry?
Madam Chair, I would not balk at having 2 or 3.
I just want to take note of that we need at least 2 or 3 more forensic auditors for this industry, of which we have none. And so that suggests that we are woefully ill-equipped to handle the industry at this time. Woefully ill-equipped. So Senator Crum?
Yeah, just back on the audits, do you do the audits remotely, or do you actually go on site and do the audits at the place of business where these online sports bettors do their business?
Madam Chair, Senator Crum, for the online sports wagering, it would be done remotely. We have the ability to go on site to their headquarters and do those kind of audits if we needed to, but most of the time on the online sports wagering side, it would be done remotely.
Madam Chair, follow up.
Follow up.
Yeah, this is just a statement. Having been in an industry that's highly regulated, I would highly recommend that we do go on site from time to time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Crum. Representative Nicholas?
Thank you. My first question, if you wouldn't balk at it, is that the same as we're in desperate need of 2 additional accountants?
Correct.
Because that really is 2 different things.
Madam Chair, Representative Nicholas, I wouldn't say that we are in desperate need. We could definitely use it. It's not going to hurt anything. Currently our accountant and our auditor, they spend all day, every day, 5 days a week looking at numbers. And they have to divert their attention either from skill games and then move from skill games to parimutuel, and then from parimutuel to online sports wagering. So it would definitely be beneficial to have, an individual assigned to each different branch that we do that could get really, specialized in depth into that area.
So follow up, Madam Chair. And then my question is, how big is online sports betting now? What's its growth curve? Because it seems to me we want to put our biggest bang where our biggest dollars are. And I think that's what you're doing now, but.
Madam Chair, Representative Nicholas. So in 2024, the total amount of monthly wagers for online sports wagering was $209 million. The cash payouts was $186 million. The non-cash payouts was $7.3 million. So the adjusted taxable gross gaming revenue for the entire year was $13.6 million. Actually, online sports wagering is the smallest revenue generator that we oversee.
Thank you.
Not according to the text messages that I'm receiving, Commissioner. We are going to drive the people to illegal activity. On that subject, though, Mr. Laramendi, so what is the consequence for, well, since we're talking about online sports betting, what is the consequence for an irregular or a material audit finding or an incorrect record? Let's start there.
Madam Chair, I mean, it would depend on the totality of the circumstances,
Right.
Obviously, but it could include up to a revocation of their license, a complete revocation of their license. They can also be fined or suspended for that. It would depend on the findings that were found in that audit. It is important to remember, though, that all of the gaming platforms that we oversee, they all undergo very rigorous lab testing by gaming laboratories that are very well versed in gaming, all things gaming, sports wagering, the skill games, the parimutuel wagering, they all have to go under that lab testing. And the lab testing does do very intricate testing of these procedures to ensure that it is accurate.
So what's the point of then having forensic audits?
Madam Chair, the forensic audits in our office align more with the online, with the skill-based amusement games and the parimutuel wagering, just because of the way that they report and how they report.
Representative Nicholas?
Well, I think he answered my question.
Anyone else? Senator Guru?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Mr. Laramendi. I'm going to ask this about each one, but we're starting with talking about online sports wagering. So we'll start with that. You were just talking about the gross numbers, the adjusted gross, what they pay taxes on. Talk to me about the difference between the two. What is the adjustment? And then what is the effective tax rate? So I'm trying to just make sure that I'm getting the right number and why that's adjusted. What's included in that adjustment? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, Senator Guru. So for online sports wagering, they must remit 10% of the total gross revenue. So they have their net, it's the total monthly wagers, less the cash winnings, less any non-cash winnings, which would be bonus plays, less any voided wagers. So if a patron places a wager and then voids it out prior to it being settled, that gets credited to them. Less any canceled wagers. That's if the operator cancels a wager, whether it be for some mishap in the system. Less any resettlements that they may have. That's an error. A resettlement on sports wagering is usually done because of an error in the line. Sometimes what'll happen is after a wager is placed and the event is done, the lines may have changed midway, so they have to resettle that out, and it may adjust the amount of the winnings or the amount of the wager itself. And they're also allowed to deduct their federal excise tax. After they get that figure, after they subtract all of those things, they get their monthly taxable gross revenue, and then they are allowed to carry over any negative carries from the prior month. If they have any, that's only good for 30 days. If they don't have any, then they would just pay taxes on that taxable gross income.
Thank you. So go back. So when you were talking about those breakouts, where is there promotional fees that get deducted from that? Is that what you were talking about before when you were talking about certain types of play? Bonus play, I think you called it.
Yeah.
So, when I bet $5, you say, if I bet $5, I get $200 from the company. Is that the bonus that you're talking about? Is that what gets deducted out, or how does that work?
Madam Chair, Senator Guru, that is correct. That would be the non-cash winnings. Those bonuses that, you see the commercials for, bet 5, get 250.
One last one.
Follow up.
Thank you. Okay, so between the gross take and then that adjusted take, what's the subtraction on that from last year? What's the difference? After all those other things are taken out.
Madam Chair, Senator Guru. So last year in 2024, the gross gaming revenue was $22.8 million, and the adjusted taxable gaming revenue was $13.6 million.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
To follow up on that, and what was the total payout for Wyoming bettors?
Madam Chair, Representative Nicholas, the cash payouts for Wyoming patrons was 186.7. Let's see, 186.7 million. Geez.
Thank you.
Sorry, Ms. Laramie, one more. So that 10%, and because I know this is going to come up because I've heard different things. Where are we in our competitive set of the 30 plus states that do online sports wagering? Where does 10% put us in that strat? And I know it's apples to oranges to a certain extent because not every state has all those carve outs that we do, but just based on the 10% versus the top of the pyramid to the bottom, where are we?
Madam Chair, Senator Guru, we're kind of in the middle. Some are a little bit lower than 10% and some are as high as 20%.
One follow. You say the highest is 20%. No state's higher than 20%, because I've heard different now. It must be because of those break numbers.
Madam Chair, Senator Guru, I haven't seen any states more than 20. I can't say that there isn't a state that's more than 20, but I haven't seen any that are more than 20.
Thank you.
So how many states are at 20 or near 20?
Madam Chair, Representative Nicholas, I'll have to get that for you. I don't have that at my fingertips.
Okay, I think we need it. So.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Moving on from online sports wagering, the next one would be the skill-based amusement games. Skill-based amusement game, their taxes are calculated on a weekly basis based on the net proceeds. So that's cash in versus cash out. They're taxed at 20% of that net proceeds. The vendors also submit a form to our office that is provided to them by our office. That report includes the total number of plays, the total dollar amount played, the total revenues earned, the total playouts to players, and then the net proceeds. This also requires an attestation report verifying that the information that they are submitted is true and accurate. This one's a little bit, for our office internally, these are, local bars. Our compliance folks are in the field all day, every day in these locations, verifying that these games are running correct software. So these audits actually are a little bit easier than most. They report to us what the individual machines made the year or the week before. And our folks can go out in the field and they can look at that machine individually and they can pull reports directly from the machine to verify that the information that they provided to the commission is true and accurate. That one is also split 9% of the of the 20% taxes goes to the school foundation program account. 2% goes to the commission for regulating the skill-based amusement games, and then 9% goes to cities and counties. On the skill-based amusement games, the commission promulgated rules for a central monitoring system. I know that's a topic that'll come up here in a little bit. But the commission does have rules that say that the commission may procure a central monitoring system for skill-based amusement games, which shall be linked to a communication network. The central monitoring system shall be administered by the commission and shall allow for the accounting, reporting, monitoring, and reading of skill-based amusement game activity to assist the commission in determining compliance with and enforcing the provision of these rules. In 2023, the commission submitted an RFP seeking bids for a central monitoring system. That RFP closed on July 10th of 2023 with no responses received. We were then allowed to start sole sourcing that program. So we began looking at vendors that could provide that. We received one proposal back that was in excess of $2 million a year. It was actually $2.3 million to be exact. At that time, the commission didn't feel that it was fiscally responsible for them to pay $2.3 million for a CMS system for the skill-based amusement games. On the skill-based amusement game side.
Director, just briefly, does the commission take any responsibility in 2023 for issuing an RFP that might not have been friendly to the industry or something that the industry could meet? Because there's certainly central monitoring systems all across the world concerning this industry. I find it surprising that there would be none in the entire world of this industry that would respond to the RFP. So either it's a problem with the RFP, or I guess there's just so much business that they're not interested in anymore.
Madam Chair, so I think the issue was the way that the RFP was crafted. It was looking at a central monitoring system across the board. So for parimutuel wagering and skill-based amusement games, it is very important to remember that these platforms are completely different. Mm-hmm. The way that they operate is completely different. We have skill games that could very easily connect to a central monitoring system. We have skill games that are not easily connected to a central monitoring system. And the way that totalizers work on the parimutuel side is a completely different animal as well. So trying to have that all together at once was problematic. And I think that was probably part of it.
Okay.
Madam Chair, the one thing that I would like to add on the skill-based side, the commission has been granted access by individual manufacturers and vendors to their platforms that they use to do reporting. So our commission staff can log into they operate them, but they can log into their back-end systems and get real-time data from those systems. And then they can also use that when they're in the field to audit real-time as well for the skill-based amusement games.
And are those systems owned by those same companies or subsidiaries of those companies?
Madam Chair, for one of them, it is owned by the manufacturer of the games. The other one is a third-party company that works for monitoring systems. Madam Chair, is there any other questions on the skill-based amusement game side of it?
So, Madam Chair,
Representative?
just tell us what the commission's position is on this issue and the need for central monetization because of the diverse nature of the various skill games. And what's their preference?
Madam Chair, Representative Nicholas, I think the commission feels that it is important to an extent. That's why we wrote that into the rules that we may procure it. But we also want to be fiscally responsible and get something that works for exactly what the commission needs it for. And that is to identify any sort of issues with reporting that we're getting. I think there's other ways, like I said, we had put that RFP out when we started sole sourcing it and we got that quote back. We've continued to look, and for the last year and a half, I've been pretty busy looking with other developers that can develop something that would work across the board that's more cost effective, that really will help us key in on the auditing side of it and the regulation side of it. So I think it's important to a point, but I do think that we're covered right now with the way that we do the reporting and the on-site audits. I'm pretty comfortable with that until we can find something that is cost effective.
So follow up. So the plan is to find something that better fits the model that you're working with and what you do and what you think is necessary to review versus doing nothing. Right?
Madam Chair, Representative Nicholas, that is correct. Yeah, we want to find something that can really assist our accounting and auditing crew, especially with the reporting that they do and funneling that money to ensure that it is accurate.
So follow up on that.
Yeah, and I'm just going to add a question to that to answer to
Okay.
this. So when you've thought about what would be helpful to you, have you thought about what an appropriate cost would be for the service? I mean, because you decided independently that 2 million was too much. So just curious as to what would be the right amount for the long-term return for time, employees, credibility, security.
Madam Chair, that's difficult to answer because I really don't know what an appropriate cost is. I do feel that $2.3 million, that's more than 2/3 of our operational budget for a year. So that was definitely out of reach. But in conversations that I've had with other developers, there is things that we should be able to implement that are in the neighborhood of maybe anywhere between $400,000 to $600,000 a year that would go across the board.
So Madam Chair,
Representative.
across the board is all three of them.
Madam Chair, Representative Nicholas, that
Yeah.
is correct.
And so then my question then is in terms of what you're trying to get to where we're trying to go, in a sense, this concept of central monitoring system. I'm just wondering if the draft bill we're using the right words, right? Because a central monitoring system may be different than an auditing system, or
Right.
conducting sufficient auditing on your behalf, or having external audits, as opposed to following every single transaction. I'm just curious. Number one, it sounds like you're doing this already. You're trying to get there. So if there's a need for the bill, and if a bill does pass, how would you change it?
Madam Chair, Representative Nicholas. So the terms that are used in the bill are pretty industry standard terms. I didn't see any issues with the terms that are used in the bill. The only thing that I saw in the bill that was concerning maybe for the commission side was I got to find it here. Providing linkage to a gaming machine in the system at a reasonable and affordable cost to the state and the permittee or operator. I don't know whose reasonable and affordable we're looking at. Mine may be very, very different from somebody else's. So I don't know exactly what, and I also don't understand or know what the cost sharing of that would be. If it would be a 50-50 split, that, the commission pays half of it, the operators pay half of it, or how that looks.
Director, how do other states do it?
Madam Chair, so the one other state that has skill games to the level that we have skill games, they put that cost on the vendors.
And what state is that?
Georgia.
And so how much of that cost is placed on the vendors?
It's my understanding 100% of that cost is.
So, and you just indicated that Georgia is about the same equivalency of Wyoming for skill-based, is that correct?
That the way that their skill base works, yes. Yeah.
What about their numbers, their revenue?
The revenue is higher.
Correct. Do you know how much higher?
I do not.
Okay.
Hey, Madam Chairman, speaking of numbers, Representative Nicholas asked a question about sports betting on what other states tax. It was up to 20%. We're in the middle. I see we currently tax skill guys double that at 20, double what we're taxing sports betting. They're at 10, these guys are at 20. What does that look like around other states? Where does Wyoming fit in on that point? And then I guess more of a general question for the Gaming Commission. I mean, where do you see the problem gambling coming from? Is it HHR and the slot machines? Is it more problematic with online sports betting, or is it the quarter game at the Parkman Bar skill game that's got everybody hooked? I mean, where are you seeing all the problem gaming? Those two questions. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Senator Beitman. So the problem gaming side of it, I think we see more of an issue with that on the online sports wagering side, because it's very easy to sit on your couch all day long and wager. The parimutuel wagering as well. We've got 45 locations now across the state. When I started with the commission in 2019, we had 14. So in the last 6 years, we've added 31 locations across the state. So the online sports wagering one is my big fear, just because the easy access to that, you don't have to drive anywhere to do that. As far as the tax rates for the skill-based amusement games, we're actually on the higher side. A lot of the skill-based amusement games, it is a very new industry, legal industry, I'll say, in the United States. Wyoming was one of the first to actually legalize skill-based amusement games the way that they did for cash payouts. A lot of other jurisdictions do it for prizes or vouchers or things like that. But for cash, Wyoming's was one of the first, and we tax on the higher side at the 20%.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. My question would be, you talked about there's problems here and there. What type of problems online versus the slot machines and those type of things?
Madam Chair, Senator Crum. So we're still working on trying to compile a lot of the problem gambling data, to look at homeless rates, bankruptcy rates, divorce rates, and see if there's a correlation between that and the advancement of gaming within the state of Wyoming. It's really tough because there's not anything out there right now that people point to that says, a lot of people don't see gambling necessarily as a problem. They think that they have a budgeting problem. They don't think that they have a gaming problem. They have a budgeting problem. So it's difficult to get that out there. I know that we have several different entities in the state that are working very hard on trying to get the word out there for, responsible gaming and problem gaming, trying to make sure that people are aware of it and know how to recognize it and handle it. The parimutuel folks, their staff is trained. They work really hard at training their staff to identify problem gaming behaviors with their customers and try to approach those customers and offer them services to make sure that they, keep it reasonable.
Thank you. Follow up? Yeah, with related like crime, assaults, battery, guns, weapon, type things, prostitution, what type of problems are you seeing there?
Madam Chair, Senator Crum, we have not seen any correlation between any sort of increased crime activity around any of these locations. That's one of the things that we look at when we start approving new locations. We try to work with the local officials and local PDs and sheriff's office to see if they have any increase in crime data for those areas. And currently we haven't seen that.
Director, what I've been most interested in light of, since the committee took this up, I'm sure some of you have seen, I know I have, the Wyoming Sports Betting Alliance has been inundating the state with marketing, with propaganda in order to influence the committee to not take any action, which I think is a pretty disturbing sign about what's going on. I was really surprised at their type of messaging though. So the one advertisement I got that was targeted to me and some of my constituents. So they've got targeted marketing, they've got data voter lists, all of a very unhealthy sign, right? We clearly don't know what we're dealing with here in Wyoming because we do a lot of regulation on a lot of powerful industries, but none quite like this, that are using images of, there's like a boy who's about 12 to 14, who's looking at his phone that says, don't let the committee raise taxes or you're going to make this child go to an illegal site. So let's talk about illegal gambling sites operated by offshoot industries or subsidiaries or others, because that's what we're really talking about here. We're not talking about individuals breaking down because they can't understand the addiction to gambling that they've created and therefore traditional street crimes ensue or bankruptcy and divorces. I'm more concerned about the industry and the illegal market that's been brought to our attention that exists. That if we move the margin just a 0.25%, we're going to enhance and send all of Wyoming's children into this illegal marketplace. So what is the commission doing to understand the illegal marketplace right now that the children are just on the precipice of going into? Can you speak to the illegal market now?
Madam Chair, so there is a very predominant illegal market on the iGaming side, especially on the iGaming side. We actually recently executed search warrants and got criminal convictions out of a case in Casper for illegal online gaming. There is online sports wagering operators that are, hosted overseas that exist. We are working on identifying those and getting cease and desist letters out. Those are very difficult. When these people are oceans away, our reach is very, very small. So the best thing that we can really try to do is educate the public and make sure that they are aware that the unregulated market is not safe. It's not safe for them as players. It puts their, their bank accounts and their identity is quite honestly on the risk. So education is really the only thing that we can do on some of these offshore hosted markets. It's about the best I can do for you right now.
Can you tell us more about the Casper case?
Certainly. So the Casper case, it was an adjudicated case. So what that was you go up to a drive-through window, you pay to put money on your books, then you go to your house and you play slots, really is what it was. You can play class 3 gaming, slot machines, poker, blackjack, roulette, craps, you name it, it's on there. And then if you win, you go back through the drive-through window and you cash out your account. So how those work is when you go up, the operator that's offering these games, they buy points at a discounted rate. It's usually 50 cents on the dollar. So for $1 for you, it costs them 50 cents. So they pay their host 50 cents per dollar, and then they sell them to the public for $1. And then, and then it's interesting with that case, as we started working that case, a lot of times in gaming, especially in class 3 gaming, and even in parimutuel, you'll always hear, return to public, the RTP, which is the percentage that goes back to the public. Excuse me, in parimutuel wagering in Wyoming, the standard or the average return to player is 92%. So 92% of every dollar goes back to the public. In this instance, when we started digging into the numbers, the return to player was 27%. So it was 27 cents per dollar, which is unheard of. I mean, ultimately, these sites are just literally ripping people off. That's all they are.
And so who was the host and how did you get tipped?
Madam Chair, so most of the complaints that come into our office is when somebody wins and doesn't get paid. That's when we get the complaint. Unfortunately, in these instances, the person that is playing and winning is also committing a crime. So we can't very well help them get their money back, but we can certainly open a case into the overarching activity. And that's what started this one. Somebody won and didn't get paid. And then they actually got trespassed. They were told not to come back. So.
And who was the host?
The host of that company is an offshore deal out of, I want to say Malaysia is that one.
Just to follow up on that, how much of your time and effort do you spend chasing illegal iGaming? I mean, is that really your bailiwick or is it? And how much
Madam
time
Chair,
and money do we spend on?
Madam Chair, Representative Nicholas. So we do have, we have our law enforcement arm, and that is what they are dedicated to doing is investigating illegal gambling, all things Title VI. So that's what their kind of focus is. We also have our compliance side that does the legal markets.
So how much do you spend chasing illegal gambling versus making sure that your folks that are legal are doing it properly?
Madam Chair, Representative Nicholas. So these ones, the illegal side of it, most of the time it comes in as complaints, and then we investigate them as we get the complaints. Or if we've identified it, just in the duties of something else, then we'll address that. And then when we don't have those cases going on, our law enforcement guys do the compliance side on the legal side as well.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. You said there's a 27% return, I believe, in illegal gaming back to the public, I think was the word you used. Is there a demand for that? I mean, is there a high demand for illegal gaming in Wyoming?
Madam Chair, Senator Crum, unfortunately, yes, there is. And I think a lot of that is because the public really doesn't understand how dangerous it is or what they're even doing. They think it's, actually, if you look now, I see them all the time. You'll get Facebook ads. I saw one not too long ago that said Wind River Casino, online now. The Wind River Casino is not online. It's never been online. It won't be online. But that's what they target that. And I've seen them for our parimutuel operators. I've seen Horse Palace properties listed as an online, and you follow those links and then it leads you down a dark path of illegal online gaming is what it is. And the consumer doesn't really realize that, they think that it's regulated. They think that it's legit. I don't think they ever realize that chances are high, extremely high, that they're never going to win anything. They're just going to get taken for as much money as they'll put into it.
Thank you. Follow on. So with that being true, that there's a high demand at 27% payout, and then we get these text messages and all these things, if we raise at 1/4 of 25 basis points, there's going to be a mass shift away from legal betting. How do you see that? I mean, we go from 92 to 27, there's a high use. If we go up 1/4, 25 basis points, is that going to drive a whole bunch of people away from the legal side?
Madam Chair, Senator Crum, that's kind of difficult too, because the offerings are completely different. So the online gaming platforms, it's standard class 3 type gaming. It's slot machines and craps and blackjack and everything else. Now, the one concern that I could see on the online sports wagering side is we do have some operators that are not as prolific in the state, that tax increase could ultimately lead them to leave the state. And then if they leave the state, I don't know where their customers are going to go. Are their customers going to go to, another regulated book that we have, or are they going to go to an illegal book offshore? That's difficult to say. Madam Chair, so moving on to the parimutuel wagering, this is probably the big one, and this is the one that we always talk about, the $2 billion. So for parimutuel wagering, they report every Wednesday, so they report weekly. This one is very interesting on how they report, because there's actually multiple reporting streams on this to ensure that the dollars are accounted for correctly. So each tote company, which is each vendor of a parimutuel device, they report not only to our office, they also report to a third-party auditor that we have, which is called the TRPB, or the Thoroughbred Racing Protection Bureau. So our office and the TRPB receives those reports directly from the tote company. That tote company, a totalizer system, if you're not familiar with it, it's like a settlement software. It's a big accounting program, and it monitors everything that those machines do. Every dollar in, every free play, every dollar out. A lot of times it'll tell you, in fact, it'll go so far as to tell you the dates and times and what denomination of dollar is put into each individual terminal. So on top of those reports directly from the tote companies, the operators also have to supply our office with reports showing all of the wagering data. And then the TRPB, they audit the reports that they've received from the totes to ensure that they match the reports that they receive from the operators. And then our office does the exact same thing. So they're auditing the reports received from the operator and the reports received from the tote companies to ensure they reconcile. And then those two entities, our office and the TRPB, then audit against each other to ensure that we all received the same 4 reports and to ensure that they're accurate. So parimutuel wagering, it's taxed at 1.9% of total handle. Total handle is not cash in. Total handle is total dollars played. So if you put $1 into a machine and you spin it and you win 5, and then you play all the 5 and you never put another dollar in it, the handle is $6. So the operators are taxed on $6, not the $1 in cash in. That's how handle works. That is split, the tax portion on that is split 0.25% to the commission, 0.25% to the LRSA, 1% goes to the cities and counties. That is split equally between the city and county unless the property is only in the county. If it's outside of municipal boundaries, the county gets 100% of that. And then likewise, they have to contribute 0.4% to the Breeders' Award Program. So last year, in 2024, for historic horse racing, the total handle or total amount played was $2.1 billion. Of that $2.1 billion in total handle, 1.9 billion of that was returned back to the wagering public. The cities and counties received $21.1 million. The Breeders' Award Fund received $8.4 million. The commission received $5.2 million. And the LRSA also received $5.2 million. The other caveat to the commission's account is every quarter, any money in excess of $1.5 million automatically rolls over to the LISRA. So our accounting folks at ANI watch that, in every quarter they're transferring money. The last one that we had just done, I think $960,000 in addition to the standard LISRA amounts. So I can also stand for any questions on the parimutuel side.
So, Director, is it the commission's position that there doesn't need to be any additional monitoring or any tools that would help make compliance or the integrity of the systems better?
So on the parimutuel side, this is something, like I had said earlier, it's completely different than the other systems with the tow companies. And actually, so the TRPB, which is our auditor that we have a contractual relationship with, they have spent years developing their own program that's similar to a central monitoring system. And actually 2 months ago, they granted our office access to that program free of charge. So now our auditors and our entire staff, myself included, we can log into that and I can see real-time reporting for all things parimutuel. I can narrow it down by property. I can narrow it down by vendor, date, anything. I have access to that through this system.
Director, did they give you access to that before or after the last Capital Finance and Investments Committee meeting?
Madam Chair, so this actually has been in the works for actually several years, and they just actually got it. July 15th is when the TRPB gave us access to that.
How long had they had access?
Well, the way that they have their system is built, they've had access to a back-end system for them, but they didn't have a forward system for their clients. They have several clients across the nation in all sorts of parimutuel jurisdictions. So it's something that they were working on that wasn't just given to us, it was actually given to several jurisdictions that use their services.
And how long have we been in contract with them?
Well, since I've been here, plus further. So I know for at least 6 years we've had a contract with them, and I actually think it's more like 12 or 13 years we've worked with them.
Hello?
Who pays for that contract?
Madam Chair, the commission does.
How much is that contract annually?
Madam Chair, roughly 30, I want to say like $36,000 a year.
Oh, that sounds too good to be true. Representative Nicholas?
Thank you. I just want to go back to your numbers. You had a 2.1 total handle. You had a 1.9 payout, right? In billion.
Madam
back.
Chair, Representative, that is correct.
And then cities and counties got how much?
21.1 million.
So you've got roughly $2 billion in profits, right? $200 million. And so the tax on that 200 million is tax equivalent. If you add all those up, is what? Roughly 20%?
Madam Chair, Representative Nichols, I believe the effective tax rate is just under that, actually. I think it ends up being like 18 or 19%.
Like, and so by the way, just to follow up on that, when you say total payout, that includes all bonuses, all advertising, or what's the net gross, or is there off of that 200 million?
Madam Chair, Representative Nicholas, so the return to public on that one is just cash payouts to the players.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. So if we're looking at $2.1 billion, if you divide that by the population of our state, that's roughly $3,600 per person as an average. Now, I understand there are people out from outside the state that are participating in this alone. So we got 45 locations that are holding machines. How many machines? And I know I have it in other material. I don't have it in front of me. How many machines are at those 45 locations?
Madam Chair, Representative Harrelson, I'll give you the rough number right now. It's about 3,000, but I'll get you the exact number here in a second.
Okay, so 3,000 machines, 3 operators with the 4th plant in the wings, and potential of more coming in. And we are currently, from what I've seen, we are not considered saturated. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Representative Harrelson. So the Spectrum report that we had commissioned along with joint appropriations last year actually indicates that the market inside the state has probably reached a saturation point. That the only way to grow this market now is to draw customers either in the counties that don't currently allow it, it's not legal to operate in, or counties that don't have it, there's just a couple that don't have it that currently allow it, or to draw consumers in from Texas, Colorado, Nebraska, or Utah.
So obviously I'm kind of outspoken on my position on this. I really struggle with the fact that, that's the first time I've heard the saturation comment. And so I do find that interesting. But when you consider we've got obviously skill-based amusement games that kind of ran a little wild for a little while, and we kind of tried to put some clamps on that. Got that. Parimutuel right now pretty much has kind of a free run of the track, no pun intended. And so now we're sitting here and we got ideas ahead of us. Is it a taxation issue? Is that how we can maybe regulate this? But I think at the end of the day, when we look at these numbers, obviously I know we're pulling money in from somewhere else, but when we're averaging $3,620 per person in the state of Wyoming, if we were just playing that realm, obviously I've never put a dime in the machine. And I know a lot of people have never put a dime in the machine. And so really, I'm going to tell you right now, we have a lot of people who have gambling problems. That's the end of the story. We have a lot of people who are spending a large amount of money gaming. And I would agree with you, the guy on his couch doing online sports wagering is probably more of a prolific issue than our Parimutuel. But I think fundamentally, and I know this to be a fact from 10 years of doing counseling in this realm, we have a problem in this state. And so as you sit there and deal with this, I need your opinion on kind of that. I understand where you, in a professional sense, you're sitting there, but is there a point where you guys, as the commission, is saying we're holding on to the reins of something we're struggling to keep a hold of, and we're concerned what it could go down the road? Obviously, I know that's you taking a position, but obviously, as you guys have to be dealing with this, as you're kind of the police force for this industry, as we're talking about dark gaming, as we're talking about all of this, the whole basket of goods for gaming, has this been a conversation that's moved into your guys' bailiwick?
Madam Chair, Representative Harrelson, it has. And that is one of the things that the commission has looked at is, when is enough? And how do we say no? I know currently right now, the Select Committee on Gaming is actually working on ways to give the commission more tools for them to say no. I think currently right now, there's some question of, do they have the ability to say no? Or, and if they do, you know, what justifications do we need to make that determination that enough is enough? So that is definitely conversations that we've had. I think the commission feels that way as well. They're looking more and more at the numbers and the study, especially the study now that we have something, you know, tangible that we can point to as far as numbers go. And I think that they're using that in consideration of things as well.
Follow.
Oh.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. So looking at the central gaming monitoring system, do you believe this is a tool that is needed? Obviously, we know we've got large amounts of money associated with potentially implementing this cross the board monitoring tool. But do you believe this tool is needed in your guys' toolbox to help with that implementation and protection of the people of Wyoming?
Madam Chair, Representative Harrison, I do in some form. I believe that we need to have some sort of an avenue to gather this data to make sure that it's accurate and to assist not only our office, but, you know, the wagering public to ensure that they're protected. So yeah, I think there's definitely a need for something. Whether or not that's the right path to go, that's up to you.
One more follow-up.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. One more follow-up. So is there a necessity for third party on this, or is this something that could be done through an IT type field where, because obviously if we're seeing $2.3 million on a biennium, or maybe it was per year, I don't remember. Is there a way we could in-house this, and this is something we could separate from a third party and do an in-house approach to the monitoring system?
Madam Chair, Representative Harrison, I think that might be tough just because of the nature of the beast. You know, I don't know if we have people that have the experience in gaming to understand how it reports and how it works. So the third party part, I think, is important to get people that have, you know, industry expertise across the board in how to put something together that does what we need it to do.
So Director, I'm gonna need you to be more direct as a director. So we have in front of us to decide on today, the central monitoring bill. You've taken a look at that. You indicated first, yes, it would be a good tool and you're generally in favor of it. And then you walked it back and said, I'm not sure this is the right vehicle. Make a decision.
Madam Chair, I appreciate that. So I believe that we need a system in place to monitor the wagering activity across the board. I believe that the commission has already promulgated the necessary rules to make that happen and to ensure that once we make that happen, the operators have no choice but to connect to that. I think that the fact that we've already promulgated those rules and we have been working very diligently on finding an avenue to make this happen, which is the most cost-effective way, I think that really does suffice for what we need it to do.
And yet there is not a central monitoring system despite rules, correct?
Madam Chair, not currently, no.
Is there a current RFP out for bid?
Madam Chair, there's not. There's been discussion of retyping a new RFP to making it, as you had said earlier, to making it more, maybe more attainable.
So we're potentially years out from implementing and deploying a central monitoring system, correct?
Madam Chair, I don't believe so, actually. Based on conversations that I've had with independent developers, I think we're much closer than that.
Senator Guru?
While you're warming up your keyboard. Yeah, one last question. I just want to make sure that I'm clear. Representative Nicholas said with regards to HHR that it was a 21% effective rate. You said it was a little bit lower than that, a tax rate. Explain, I want to make sure that I understand. What was the rate that you said that you think is the effective tax rate? And does that just include payments to tax payments to the various places that it goes? Or are you still including in that any other costs like, for the purses or for the track or for anything else? Is that included in that number, or are we just talking something? I want to make sure I got it apples to apples.
Madam Chair, Senator Guru. So no, that is not including any of that. That's really, it's based on just what their net proceeds would be. Ultimately, the total handle versus the payout or the payout to the public. And I believe it comes out at about 19% as their effective tax rate. And then of that 19%, they would have to pay for all of their operational expenses, including their taxes and everything else.
Follow up, everything else, explain everything else.
Madam Chair, so that would be their purses, their live horse racing operations, any overhead for OTB operations, employees, any sort of vendor agreements that they have with their totes and their manufacturers of terminals, all of that other stuff, everything else.
Thank you.
Senator Crum?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a point of clarification, because we're talking about a lot of different things here. We're talking about online, and then we're talking about skill games, and then we're talking about pari-mutuel, and we haven't even talked about lottery or anything. What monitoring system are we talking about, and who are we talking about it for? Is it for everybody, or is it, because I think the testimony was they're totally different systems and act different ways. So what are we talking about? Just clarification, what are we talking about here right now on monitoring?
So, Madam Chair, Senator Crum, so the bill before you is a central monitoring system that compiles all three of them. What I'm talking about in the conversations that I've had with the developer is similar to that. It compiles all three of them. It just does it through different resources. So it doesn't do it, one of the things that this bill calls for, I think is, you start adding, let me find it here. It talks about the, like adding hardware into terminals. Essentially, that's what you would kind of have to do to make this happen is put hardware in these terminals, every one of these terminals that reports directly to another system. There is concern about adding hardware because if the commission is mandating that you add hardware and then you have something happen with that hardware to where it's vulnerable to, a hacker, and then a hacker enters in through something that the commission mandated that you put into that machine, then who's liable? So there is ways around that. And like I said, I have been working with developers for about the last 18 months. And these are folks that have decades and decades of gaming experience and technological experience in the gaming industry. And they have developed ways that we can tie all of these together to get their reports and to ensure the accuracy of the wagering data without necessarily putting hardware and stuff in these machines that could open, the commission or the state up to any sort of liability.
Just want to put some clarity on that. If a hacker would do illegal conduct through a required device or in the machines, there's no liability. Okay, that's a criminal actor doing a criminal conduct of which the state has governmental immunity. So any hysteria around hackers, right, and liability to the state, baloney. Ask the AG. All right, that's just hysteria. These are electronic machines that are reporting back to their own company, correct?
Madam Chair, that is correct. A lot of them, they're reporting on some though.
So they're already hackable, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Director, I believe I heard you say during the questioning regarding all the ill effects of gambling that you are asking the question, does the commission have the authority to say no? Did I hear you say that, first of all? And if you said that, I believe there was a court case with my county where the commissioners tried to say no. And the judge said that the commission was the one that had that authority and that the local government had no authority, even though they had been involved with the original contracting when they came in to start the gambling. venture. Could you answer that question in that light?
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, so yes, that is the question is, you know, the way that the statute currently reads, it says that the commission may issue, amend, or deny a permit in their discretion. However, there have actually been a couple of different court cases. There's been some court cases in Campbell County. There was one in Sweetwater County. And the results of those cases said, you know, specifically with the Sweetwater County case, the judge came back and said, well, if you've said yes to one, and then, now granted, this was to the county commission, but if you've said yes to one, you don't really have the authority to say no to another. Once you've opened the door, you don't really have much of a avenue to say no to anybody else. So the fear is that that would still ride with the commission as the regulatory body, that decision would be for them as well. That since we've said yes before, do we have the authority to say yes or no?
Thank you. So when I'm looking at the case with Campbell, the judge specifically said that even though the operator was in violation of the contract, they could not cancel the contract. Only the commission could do so. So we're talking not necessarily about controlling the gambling atmosphere, but really holding gambling corporations, you know, to the agreements that we've made with them. And in that situation where they violated those local governments have given, or by the courts have been given no latitude to end those agreements. They've given it all to the commission. Would you agree with that?
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, I would agree with that. And once a permit is issued, if they violate terms of the rules, the commission absolutely has the authority to hold these operators accountable.
Just a point of clarity there. The courts didn't give that authority. The legislature did, through how our statute is written. And we are responsible for the laws that we make. And so I think the challenge is because the language we put in statute says shall, the counties don't have any discretion as a result of our statutory language that we're responsible for and have failed to fix.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So real quick, Director, if I could, I want to throw out a little bit of homework just because for my own brain, if no other reason, for my decision-making ability. I don't know if we have a mechanism to know how much of this money is coming out of Wyoming through Wyoming citizens. How much is a bleed-in? And I'm not talking about just pari-mutuel. I'm talking about, can we see on skill-based pari-mutuel online sports wagering? Obviously, lottery's outside of your purview, so don't worry about that. But I'm just saying on these big three, what's going back to my saturation conversation? What is our actual number? Can we tell? Obviously, you go right down on the border, the new horse palace that was just installed. I would assume or built. I would assume majority of that's probably south of the border action coming north, but not all. So can we get that window and get an idea of exactly how much is being spent every single year on the big three from Wyoming citizens, if at all possible, or Wyoming residents? If I could get that in an email, I'd appreciate it. And if you can't, just explain. I mean, if we don't have that metric, I understand, because we obviously don't have a central monitoring system yet. But if we have that information, I'd love to have it.
Madam Chair, Representative Harrison, I'll do my best. Even with the central monitoring system, though, it's not going to track where the player's from. So that might be difficult. I will, to your point, though, the Swan Ranch location here, right now we're estimating that about 80% of the handle that's coming out of that location is actually coming from Colorado. So, but I'll do my best to get some numbers to you.
Anything further in committee, just for clarification? For our understanding, we kind of jumped the gun a little bit in that we haven't walked through the bill draft. And so we've discussed it with the director just for time efficiency to get his opinion on the bill draft, but we probably should have walked through the bill draft first and then heard from him. So just recognize that we'll call the director back up for questions directly on the bill draft itself as well and keep him available. So any further questions to the director, or director, do you have anything else you wanted to add for your presentation for us?
Madam Chair, no, the only thing that I would offer is anybody is welcome to come to our office anytime and get a tour and see all the inner workings anytime.
Representative Nicholas?
But it seems to me, and that's what comes down to 180 million employees. Even in last year. To do that. And if we know that's paying on average 90% payout plus, we should be able to calculate at insurance. At a pretty close estimate, how much dollars. If I'm going back to kind of that $3,600 per person, you know that in order that to pay out and have that type of income at 2.1 million, you've got a pretty good idea of the churn and the handle. So what is that, or what have you guys computed?
Madam Chair, Representative Nicholas, I will have to get that because I know that has been computed. And I know that actually some of the operators also compute that for their own internal, and they might be able to speak to that as well. But I know internally we have, our accounting office has some of that. I can get that to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So we kind of playing off of Representative Harrelson's question, if we did have a central monitoring system, wouldn't we be able to program it to identify which state you claim residency? Because I'm assuming since we don't, like Colorado has a state income tax, I take it that's self-reporting. If they come up here and win $1 million, how is the state of Colorado going to know they won $1 million if it's not, if you guys aren't withholding that for them or somehow? Trust me, I don't know anything about this realm. I'm trying to learn so we can make smart policy here. But is there a mechanism that you can use in the central monitoring system to be able to identify, make them declare what state they live in so then they could withhold the proper taxes and for child support, you name it? Is that possible?
Madam Chair, Senator Brightman, it's not possible because you can walk into any location and sit down at a machine and put $1 in it. And, you're not required to show an ID. Now, the caveat to that is if you win we call them a hand pay. So if you win something that is reportable to the IRS, which in parimutuel wagering, it's 300 times your bet, that is reportable to the IRS. So in order for you to claim that money from the operators, you have to provide identification. They have to fill out forms for the IRS, and then they have to send that off to the IRS. So the IRS is made aware of those types of winnings for sure.
So the logical follow-up would be then why wouldn't Wyoming say, if you want your money, you got to show us your ID so we know where you're from, correct? And you said you can just walk into any slot machine and sit down and gamble. What if nobody's checking IDs at the door?
Madam Chair, in some of the, Senator Brightman, no, in some of the locations, they have tellers that are on the floor that are roaming the floor. If they see something, suspicious, or if they see somebody that appears to be underage, they will card them, but there's no current, a lot of these places, it is though important to remember that they have liquor licenses. So if they have a liquor license, then obviously there's some carding procedures that they have internally that is different. But the legal age to play parimutuel wagering currently in the state of Wyoming is 18, and there's no requirements under state law that they have to ID every individual player before they play a machine.
It's like pulling on a thread, Madam Chairman. There's just more questions than answers, but thank you.
We will take our afternoon break. And when we come back, we'll do the bill draft presentation. Stay close, Director. So we will come back from our afternoon break at about 2:35. That gives us a 7-minute break, 2:35. back from our afternoon recess. The time is 2:45 and we are back. Committee, we have a lot of additional work to get through today, and I know a lot of unplanned presentations from the agenda that may be presented to us in public comment. You might be surprised to know, but all sections of the gaming industry are opposed to our work for the afternoon. Just helping you, they are opposed. So it just to help expedite the process, but we are on 26 LSO 124 Gaming Central Monitoring System. Mr. Fuller.
Yep, this is version 0.57-01 in the online meeting materials. This bill draft would require the Wyoming Gaming Commission to develop and operate a central monitoring system for gaming activities, subject to various conditions. And Madam Chairman, I'll start slightly out of order just to help better explain the bill. So I'll begin on page 3, line 21. And this is the language that requires the Gaming Commission to develop and operate a central system into which all gaming machines and online sports wagering systems under the Gaming Commission's jurisdiction are connected and are capable to be monitored. The central system shall be capable of, and now I'm moving on to the top of page 4, first, monitoring all gaming machines under their jurisdiction continuously. Second, retrieving and auditing the operations, financial data, and program information of the network and all connected gaming machines. Third, disabling from operation or play any gaming machine in the network that doesn't comply with the applicable statutes. Fourth, communicating through program modifications or other means with all gaming machines under their jurisdiction. And fifth, providing linkage to each gaming machine in the system at a reasonable and affordable cost to the state and the permittee or operator, and allowing for program modifications and system updating at a reasonable cost. As Director Laramendi noted, that what that cost is not specified in the bill. It would be left to the commission to determine how that's broken down. Then, Madam Chairman, I'll go back to page 2, line 13. And this is in 924-102B, a new paragraph concerning rules for online sports wagering, a new paragraph that says that rules must include requirements for any system operated by a sports wagering operator by which online sports wagering is offered, conducted, or operated to be connected to that centralized system. The change on page 2, line 19 is just renumbering. Page 3, line 12 is a similar concept for simulcasting that would require each permittee to have their simulcasting devices connected to the central system. Then moving on to page 5, line 5, this is in 1125-201 concerning parimutuel permits. The same concept for parimutuel operators, that they would be required to connect their historic horse racing machines to the centralized system. And then page 5, line 13, similar concept for skill-based games. All of those games must be connected to the online system. Page 5, line 17 makes clear that this requirement for the centralized system would apply to all games and machines regardless of when they entered operation. So games currently in operation or that would come into operation would be subject to this act. On page 6, there's rulemaking authority for the Gaming Commission and then a split effective date with the rulemaking effective immediately. With that, Madam Chairman, I'd be happy to answer questions.
Any questions, Senator Driscoll?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. What would is there a section in here that says that if they don't get it done, what happens? Because it appears to me we're telling them to do it. We've got a letter in our memos that came that says from gaming consultants that said they don't think it can be done. So we're putting ourselves in a place that we're asking something to happen that really can't happen. That's now law.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, Senator Driscoll, I don't know if I have I certainly wouldn't be able to answer about the technical feasibility of this. I would need to look back at my computer to see the other statutes that say what happens if you don't comply with this act. I believe there is statutory language to that effect, but I'd want to double check that.
Any further questions regarding the statute to Mr. Fuller or the bill? Sorry, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. I'm sorry, Senator Crum?
My question, I just don't see in this bill, who pays for this? If we put monitoring, but who's gonna pay for it?
I think it's up to the commission.
Bill that says who's gonna pay for it, is that right?
Yep. Madam Chairman, Senator Crum, the only language would be that language on page 4, line 20, about linking to the system at a cost to the state and the permittee, but that's not defined who would pay what. That would be left to the commission to determine.
Thank you.
Director. Director, thanks for coming back. So on this bill draft, there's some communication that having a central monitoring system is simply not possible in Wyoming. Do you believe that to be true?
Madam Chair, I think the issue on the technical side of it is the difference between all of the different platforms. Trying to put them all together would be it would be a very big lift and a very expensive lift.
And a big lift for whom?
Not only the commission, but whichever vendor ends up partaking on this journey with us.
And just a follow-up question, how many states have a central monitoring system?
Madam Chair, as far as I know, I mean, several states have different systems in place to monitor, but they're monitored independently of one another. So, you know, for example, like Las Vegas has monitoring systems for casino floors on the slot side of it. And then they have different programs that monitor the online sports wagering side of it. In Georgia, they have, you know, a system for the skill-based side of it. They have systems for the lottery side of it. They're just, I have not been able to find a state that has one system that monitors all of the gaming activities within their jurisdictions.
Madam Chair, my follow-up on that question.
Representative Nicholas.
So when I read this,
right,
because my first question is why don't we say gaming central monitoring systems?
Correct.
Make it plural and not singular. But then when I go through each section for skill-based, for parimutuel, it talks about a system. It doesn't necessarily talk about having them all interrelate to each other.
Yeah.
If we need to clarify that language, then we should, because I think it's a little ambiguous.
Yeah, to follow up on Representative Nicholas, I think where the ships are passing in the night, the intention of this legislation, and I think the reference to a central monitoring system in all the states, doesn't mean one technology platform for all of the different categories of gaming. Obviously, due to the unique functionalities of each category of gaming, the technology associated with it, the platform with it is different. But a centralized monitoring system means just that, using whatever technology platform is required, but that you have access to real-time, independent third party, not owned by the gaming industry, not controlled by the gaming industry, and not voluntary by the gaming industry, but truly this third party technology that's able to verify the data real time. A different one for parimutuel, a different one for skill games, you know, whatever the technology is. So I think there's a serious disconnect in the semantics that we're using, but the intention of this bill draft is not saying, you know, one technology to serve them all, because I don't think that does exist. Does that make sense? Is that correct in the different understanding potentially?
Madam Chair, yeah, that makes much more sense to me.
Representative Bear?
I can certainly see where that confusion could come when our bill says shall develop and operate a central system connected and able to monitor all gaming machines, retrieving and auditing, disabling from operation, and communication through. These are, I mean, this says a system that's connected to all programs.
Yeah, I think you've identified what Representative Nicholas said, that we just need some clarifying language there, but I don't think that the committee or the bill draft was trying to do something that would be not in existence anywhere in the world, but rather adopting a central monitoring system similar to other states. And so talking to other states who have programs called central monitoring systems or system, do you know the states that have different types of central monitoring systems?
Madam Chair, a lot of states that have gaming within their jurisdictions have some sort of central monitoring or central reporting system. A lot of them are referred to either or, central monitoring systems or central reporting systems.
And based on your experience, what is the definition of that?
Madam Chair, it would be a central point to where all the data is received that the commission oversees.
So let me change the question. if I
Representative
can.
Nicholas, thank you.
What if we add that sentence, say, an act of related gaming requiring the Wyoming Gaming Commission to develop operating systems, central operating systems as specified. So it's systems. So, and then you break it down, and we've got parimutuel, skill-based, and online. So each one can be a separate system, but it all reports back to your central system, which is different than the systems that are actually reporting. They're just reporting the information that you require that allows independent auditing. Would that make more sense?
Madam Chair, Representative Nicholas, that would make more sense.
And would that would be much more economical, I presume?
Madam Chair, Representative Nicholas, I believe so, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so again, going to the Oracle, a central monitoring system for gaming is a centralized software and hardware solution that connects, regulates, and analyzes gaming operations. Its specific function varies depending on the context, but it is most commonly used in casino gambling to ensure regulatory compliance or in online gaming performance and server management.
Is the Oracle Chat GPT?
It's the AI overview.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I think this really demonstrates, again, to my point, how naive we all are in that key members of the legislature, gaming commission, industry aren't even on the same page when it comes to the definition of a centralized monitoring system and are struggling with even defining what that means. And I admit that the bill draft doesn't provide that unique clarity, but how we are woefully ill-equipped potentially in understanding the industry that's currently upon us. So, but we're going to get there, painfully. Any further questions regarding the bill draft to the director? All right, we'll move on.
Madam Chair.
Senator Crum.
Yeah, on page 4, line 11, talks about disabling from operations or play any gaming machine in the network. My question, Madam Chair, is that then the responsibility of the Gaming Commission? You'll actually have a switch, or there'll be an automatic thing there that'll turn the machine off?
Madam Chair, Senator Crum, the way that I read that, it would be the commission would have the ability to disable these terminals or these machines if it's found to be in non-compliance.
Correct. Representative.
Oh, it's phone.
Madam Chair, Representative Nicholas, power button.
I mean, you can't. So you for an online network, it'd have to be turn off the whole online network.
Madam Chair, Representative Nicholas, so a lot of these terminals, they have, it's called like a tilt mode that just makes the machine inoperable. So, when currently, like if we're in the field doing compliance checks and we see, for example, a skill-based amusement game that maybe doesn't have the proper decals on it, they can put it either in tilt mode or they will physically unplug the terminals and take them out of service until it's corrected.
And I think to help to Representative Nicholas's point, and I think what an amendment that I have proposed to the bill, if we get there, is to eliminate for online sports betting where people are using their personal handheld devices as opposed to parimutuel and being in a facility of some sort. And so that's again where we're not talking about the same thing with significant consequence. But I don't think that there is meaningful technology at this point when it comes to personal devices. And so we likely will need to exempt out at this point in time, based on current technology, online sports betting using handheld devices.
And I have another follow-up question. So on that page 4, on who pays, I'm presuming we need to resolve that, right?
Madam Chair, Representative Nicholas, that would be appreciated.
Okay. And currently, who's paying for the work that you're doing in terms of having monitorization and auditing?
Madam Chair, Representative Nicholas, so that just comes out of our standard budget for any of the programs that we currently use.
Senator Driscoll.
Are you staffed adequately to be able to take on this? This appears to me to be pretty mega huge with a lot of technical aspects. And I guess mine is, we don't really address it, but who should be paying for this? You know, I'm a little loath to think that the state ought to be picking it all up, yet I'm not sure how you hit this happy medium. I'd like you to kind of lay out your thoughts if we pass something, kind of who would do it and what it'd require of you folks for additional people and resources necessary.
Madam Chair, Senator Driscoll, I don't believe that this would require any further personnel for our office. You know, this would end up falling on a third-party vendor to, you know, we would assist them in getting them what they need to develop these. But then after that, it's not going to require any further personnel on our side.
Can I follow up on that response? I'm under the impression from your previous testimony that you can almost do this internally. And, or do you need an independent company to come in and do it? Because that's, in essence, you've been kind of telling us that you're almost already there for most practices. And that you've got, including your, unless it's outside auditing, but in terms of just having the systems to perform the central monitoring of and having the data come through, that's just modifying your system to be complete. So and if that's the case, then I'm not sure of why you would need an independent entity on top of that.
Madam Chair, Representative Nicholas, so we do have the ability currently to cover several parts of this already. So the retrieving and auditing the financial data, we have that across the board for the pari-mutuel side. We have that for approximately 90% of the skill-based amusement game market. Again, that's, you know, vendor specific. The one thing that we don't have the ability to do is, you know, disabling these terminals remotely from our office. We don't have that ability at all. That's something that we'd have to go into the field to do. But yeah, for the most part, we do have the ability to monitor the financial and the program information currently on the pari-mutuel side and on 90% of the skill-based amusement game side.
Madam Chairman, Director, I was under the understanding the skill games weren't hooked to the internet. Are they all hooked up and on live now? Because my understanding has always been they were kind of standalone terminals that weren't hooked up live.
Madam Chair, Senator Driscoll, in the early stages of skill-based amusement games, they were standalone. There wasn't a lot of communication, network communication. That has changed over the last couple of years. And now I think 99% of them, there's a couple of them that are not connected to any sort of network, and that's just because of their location, because there's no network to be connected to.
Perfect. Yeah, when we formed that, we were told it was impossible. I think that's kind of neat. Thank you.
Anything else? Anything further?
So let me just, one more question.
Yeah.
So if we change this so it's systems and not one system, so that you'll have a system to get where you need to go. And if we basically direct that you'll take it out of your budget, so there won't be any cost at this point. And then if we extend the full compliance, let's say another 6 months to a year, so that you can get all your ducks in a row and actually come back to us and say, now we've done it, we've been working on it, and we feel comfortable, and here's how we're doing it. Does that make sense?
Madam Chair, Representative Nicholas, yes, and I think that would be doable.
Thank you.
All right, anything further from the director? All right, we'll of course might call you back up again. With that, we will go to any public comment.
And Madam Chairman, just in response to Senator Driscoll's question regarding statutes and would there be any penalties, at least for the pari-mutuel and the skill-based games, current language, this is 1125-208 for pari-mutuel, 1125-306 for skill-based games. This language, if enacted, those penalties in those sections would apply to violations of this act.
Public comment? Yeah, this is good stuff. This is good stuff.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, Catherine Wilkinson and Jonathan Downing here on behalf of Cowboy Skill and Pace-O-Matic. I think the discussion has changed our testimony a little bit. The main problem was connecting 3 different systems to one system. I think there is major concern, with the skill games, trying to connect to a slot-based system and changing an entire machine. I believe that the direction the committee is going in is better. I would also mention, though, this is outlined specifically in the skill game rules currently. It's Chapter 5, Section 6, where if the Gaming Commission does do a central monitoring system, the skill games will have 6 months to come up to compliance. So we say that we do think it is duplicative as it is currently promulgated in rules, but we are working with the commission. We have also offered audit keys to the commission. They have full access to all of our machines currently. And if a machine had ever needed to be shut down, all they'd need to do is call an operator or vendor and we'd turn that off right away. But we have worked fully with the commission. We've had active discussions with them within the last 6 months about the proposals that they're working with to see what solutions may help. So we are at the table with that. So with that, Madam Chairman, I would stand for any questions. Thank you.
For public comment. All right, seeing none, public comment is closed. Committee, back to you. Moved and seconded. Let me just get my bill draft up here.
Madam Chair, I have an amendment.
Yes. Representative Nicholas.
On page 1, line 2, you strike A, and on line 3 after system, insert systems. So you're adding an S. And that's the only change.
It's been moved and seconded by Representative Nicholas, seconded by Senator Guru. Discussion on the amendment. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. That motion has passed. You got the amendment? Okay, any further amendments? Representative Nicholas?
So Madam Chair, on page 4. Actually, I think the answer is, I think we can just strike paragraph 5. Starting at line 20.
Okay, so for those who know Representative Nicholas, know that when he proposes amendments, he moves as far away from his mic as he possibly can. And so those of you who did not hear that, Representative Nicholas was mentioning striking on page 4, lines 20 through 23, which is also paragraph Romanet 5. And that says providing linkage to each gaming machine in the system at a reasonable and affordable cost to the state and the permittee or operator, and allowing for program modifications and system updating at a reasonable cost. So that's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
So Madam Chair, the commission already does that, and by their rules, they require the linkage. So it's already in effect in their rules and their operating instructions. The only thing this really adds is the cost, the reasonable cost component. And I think we've heard sufficient testimony that the cost of demanding this or putting these two systems together for the three types of gaming that we've talked about can be absorbed by the current budget within the commission. And if not, they can come back to us and ask for money and say, this is what it cost us. And we can then pass on the cost to where it belongs, which I think would be with the vendors at some stage.
Adding to the discussion, Representative Nicholas, so I did not hear that. I heard that they can't afford it, it's out of their budget. What they currently do, which is the unusual free system for $30,000 a year, which sounds like the first hit's always free type of a situation. And I question that vendor, but I hope you're right, that they're providing all of this service for a mere $30,000 a year, which doesn't seem like a good business model. So I actually don't think to have a sufficient centralized monitoring system that allows for the linkage, that it would be using the same systems that they currently have in place. So perhaps we need more understanding on what linkage means as applied to a central monitoring system.
Well, I think part of the answer to that is to have Nick come up and ask us if that linkage is significant or not, or if they already do it, or what their practices are and their requirements.
Madam Chair, so currently the machines are linked to their own internal systems, but to have those linked to a central system to each one, there is going to be, there's going to be a cost associated with that. And that's a cost that I really don't know what that would be until we start, sourcing out these systems to put them in place.
Madam Chair, and so it'll be different for skills game versus pari-mutuel machines versus.
Right.
Right.
Madam Chair, Representative Nicholas, yes, it would be different. I think it would be different across the board, just based on the functionality of how they already operate. Some might be easier to connect to this type of a system versus others that might take more, technical expertise. And
so follow up, Madam Chair.
Well,
so in the rules where you put together your monitoring system, your centralized system, do you require linkage in those rules?
Madam Chair, Representative Nicholas, we do require linkage to that. In fact, the way that the rule is written currently, it says that prior to being launched, the commission shall notify all vendors of the date by which the vendors and operators of skill-based amusement games must be linked to the central monitoring system. The commission shall provide the vendors and operators the technical specifications required for proper connectivity. All statewide skill-based amusement games must be connected to the central monitoring system within 6 months of the date of notification. The central monitoring system shall not provide for the monitoring or reading of personal or financial information concerning the patrons. Any attempt by a vendor or operator to evade or alter any information provided to the central monitoring system shall be subject to disciplinary action.
So, Madam Chair, just to make it simple, I'll make amendment to my proposal. And that is line 21 after system, put an S and put a period.
Does the second find that friendly, Senator?
Very much.
Okay, so does everyone understand the amendment? The motion and the amendment? Just a quick question for the director on this topic. When was that rule initially enacted?
Madam Chair, I'll have to look, but I believe it was 2023, early 2023, shortly before we sent out that RFP.
And how long has there been a rule in place for central monitoring systems?
Since about 2023.
Is that the first time?
Correct. Yeah.
How long had you been discussing central monitoring systems within the commission?
Probably about a year prior to that, Madam Chair.
Yes, pretty recently. All right. All those in favor of Representative Nicholas's motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, that motion has passed. Representative Haroldson?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So on page 3, line 21, we would strike A. After central, put in monitoring. Line 22, place an S after systems. And on page 4, line 1 after monitored, insert by State Gaming Commission.
Can I get a second?
Second. And
Just
just
to-
to follow up on that for discussion,
Conforming?
does that make sense? I mean, we're talking about generalities now in this, in section 1125-104, so it's comprehensive.
Yes, it'd be a conforming amendment, it sounds like.
To what we
Right.
did on page 1.
And Madam Chairman, if I may, I had actually sketched out a sentence in response to some of the comments. Perhaps after, on page 4, line 1, after monitored, insert a sentence, something like the commission may utilize separate platforms for centralized monitoring of each form of gaming subject to the commission's jurisdiction.
And make conforming amendments. Representative,
I think that's what I said.
that's what he said. And that was seconded by Representative Nicholas. Discussion,
Discussion.
Senator Crum.
Yeah, my only concern, I agree with where we're going with it, is that we don't limit it. There may be a program come out in the future that is one program. Right now, we're saying we have, the way we just heard, multiple. I just don't want to limit us from going to one if there is one 5 years from now. So,
Mr. Fuller, are there any concerns with that concern based on what you proposed? Can't read it.
So Madam Chairman, I think the way I wrote the sentence is that they may utilize. So if there is one, they could, if for, reasons, that's best for the commission or what have you, they could utilize those separate platforms, if there's not one central system capable of all.
All right, thank you. Everyone ready to vote? Representative Pendergraph?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess maybe I'm a little dense, but I don't understand the need for this bill at all. It doesn't seem to me that it does anything that isn't already being accomplished. What am I missing?
Well, in my opinion, it's not being accomplished really at all. So what we have currently in Wyoming, and it depends on which category of gaming you're talking about. So what happens is we start circle talking, but it depends on which category of gaming you're talking about, but none of them have a centralized monitoring system unique to their industry. They have portions of a monitoring system, but it's not centralized to the Gaming Commission. So what we know is that all categories of gaming self-report on forms provided by the Gaming Commission. Well, a self-report, in my opinion, is not a third-party audit or a verification process. Then we have information that there's some categories of gaming that have their own internal monitoring systems of which they control and then allow access to that internal monitoring system to the Gaming Commission upon request. But it's controlled by the gaming company itself. But there's no centralized third-party comprehensive monitoring system for each category of gaming unique to the unique categories of gaming. And that's what we're trying to accomplish here. And in light of Wyoming's advanced participation in the gaming industry and its rapid growth, that this really is appropriate for where we are, and perhaps the commission creating written forms for these companies to fill out and submit isn't necessarily the gold standard for the gaming industry in Wyoming. So the effort is there. Of course, it's not in place. Senator Crum?
yeah, back on paying for this monitoring system, we still haven't really addressed that. And I'd like to see, I guess, a little background, coming out of the banking industry, banks pay for their they pay for the FDIC to run. They pay, here in the state of Wyoming, the banks actually pay the Department of Banking's the whole department. And I don't see why the gaming industry wouldn't pay this. So I'd like to propose amendment, whatever the cost is, gets passed on, as we've heard like other states, 100% goes to the gaming industry. Whatever that is.
Taking us back, I think that's a great amendment for Senator Crum to bring after we vote on this particular motion on the floor right now, or for the committee. And that motion was Representative Haraldson's motion, which was Mr. Fuller's proposed language.
Just one clear. before we vote.
Yeah, Representative Haraldson.
Thank you. Just a clarifier. So it would be the language on page 3 that I suggested, and then your language on page 4. Okay.
Everybody clear? Okay, all those in favor of Representative Haraldson's motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, we're back on the bill. Any additional amendments?
Madam Chair.
Senator
I
Crum?
think, to save time, I just make that motion I just stated. I'd like to have an amendment.
Second.
So,
it's-
I concur with the concept. But I'm not sure how to put it in language. And we actually don't know what the costs are going to be. If there are additional costs for you to implement it. And so it's a future concept, but any thoughts from LSO on just any costs related to the implementation of this over and above the current budget of the commission will be borne by the vendors, and it would be the respective vendors, because it's going to be different for each group on what that cost may be for you to adjust to get there. And so it's kind of to me, that's kind of the conceptual amendment I think that we're talking about. Is that fair?
Somewhat, but there's got to be language. I'm go back to the banking industry, that there's language in somewhere in statute on banks, how they get charged, and that changes, over time because of the cost. Salaries increase in the Department of Banking, travel increases, so the fees have got to go up. And I would think there's some sort of language out in statute that we could model that whatever the fee is, I just think it needs to be passed on. If it's 0, then 0 gets passed on. If it's 2 million, I think the number we heard somewhere was $2 million, then it gets passed on. I don't think the state of Wyoming or the citizens should have to pay the fee to monitor the gaming industry.
So I think we can do that. You got an idea?
Mr. Fuller, ready, go.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, first question would be, is the concept anything that exceeds the current budget of the Gaming Commission, or is the concept the cost of this system would be borne by the operator and permittee?
So I believe Senator Crum's motion is that the commission would not bear the costs of the system, but the system would be borne by the operators and vendors. And no doubt we will hear feedback on that. And so it could be massaged later or amended later.
Then Madam Chairman, with that in mind, I could draft language that, probably in that intro somewhere on page 3, line 21 through page 4, line 2, a sentence that would require the any costs of the system to be paid by the permittee or applicable operator, if that's the intent. One other, and I'll let my colleagues from Budget Fiscal correct me. The Gaming Commission's budget is all special revenue already, I believe. Yep. So that would be another alternative, to consider with where those funds come from.
So, Madam Chair, I think if we have something that basically says that any cost required by the commission over and above their standard budget will be allocated to the respective monitoring system that drove those costs and be borne by the providers of that system.
So Madam Chairman, I just want to be real clear, because I think that's a separate concept from what the movement brought up. Obviously that's a policy choice, but I would appreciate just clear direction on what the amendment is and whatnot before that's voted upon. Thank you.
Senator Crum?
Yeah, my amendment's very straightforward. Whatever the cost is that would be of these systems that would be borne by the providers, not by the Gaming Commission. Just whatever the cost is passed on. Not $1 more, not $1 less, just whatever the cost is.
And so, can I respond?
Representative?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think Senator Crum, that's what we're doing because all of their budget comes out of gaming dollars.
It's like Department of Banking.
So it's the same pot of money. What we're saying, if these systems for each type of system, if it costs more to the agencies outside their budget, then they'll assign that to the monitoring system that created that excess cost outside of their system. So it's back end way saying the same thing you're saying, I think. But I think it's an easier way to put it in a statute. I'm just trying to facilitate an easy way to do it.
So here's just purposes of discussion. Here's a proposed amendment that I'll have later, but it adds to this piece, which is to require the commission to be under contract with a centralized monitoring system for each of these categories of gaming no later than July 1st of 2027. That's too long in my opinion. But the reason why I picked July 1st, 2027 is it allows for an actual RFP to go out on all these different categories and to be responded to, then to get information back on the actual costs before the 2027 legislative session. And so any necessary amendments to costs and who bears what can potentially be addressed in the 2027 legislative session. So that's kind of a stopgap to this concept if it makes folks uncomfortable as to we have this unknown number that could be high that we would pass on to the companies. And we that makes us uncomfortable and that seems a bit unfair. I get that. But that's likely the result that we're seeking and what we want to do. But we wish we had more information as a result of more RFPs potentially having gone out over the course of years on these different categories of gaming, but we just don't have that. And so that is a stopgap that we can consider. So I'm in support of Senator Crum's motion. And it's just simple that all costs associated with any monitoring system is borne by the operators. And the commission shall establish rules accordingly, right? But that's essentially the Senator Crum's motion.
Yeah, Madam Chair, my motion's not to penalize anybody. It's not to one way or the other. It's just to make sure the citizens of the state don't pay for the cost of doing business of a single industry. That's it.
Yeah, I think we all agree with that.
Yeah, Senator Beitman?
Well, I guess my question then is, if the motion were to fail, wouldn't we still be in the same boat? The state's not paying for this anyway, right?
Well, I think we could be if we don't clarify because the commission's budget is currently based on the gaming industry's participation now. And so that's limited based on what they're currently bringing in. And so without the ability for the commission to assess additional costs, then there could be a deficit. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, that is correct. If it's not outlined, the commission would bear the cost of that.
Ms. Scott is raising her hand.
Madam Chair, one approach would be to put an appropriation in the bill from special revenue, which is the source for the commission's budget. And you could, not knowing the specific amount, put up to a certain amount. That would be one approach.
It's a reasonable approach. Representative Bear?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Director, could you remind us on the HHR, there was a certain amount that went to the LISRA. It was 5.2 million is automatic, but then anything that you guys didn't use, there was also an appropriation. I think it was a couple of million.
That's right.
Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, it's anything over 1.5 million every quarter gets rolled over to the LISRA.
That's a solution. Pull that back. Okay, so just to move this forward, Senator Crum's motion is pending. Any further discussion on Senator Crum's motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. That motion is passed. Any further amendments?
I would move that we extend the implementation date till July 1, 2027. I think that's what you just talked about.
It is, yeah. So that's been moved and seconded. Does everyone understand the motion and did everyone hear the motion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right, that motion has passed. I have an additional motion, which is a conflict of interest provision, which has been taken from Nebraska, just so everyone knows. I looked at their central monitoring system as applied to skill games there. And so the language is as follows, and I have to decide where it goes in the bill draft. My apologies to LSO staff. But in order to avoid the appearance of any impropriety among cash device licensees, the successful bidder will not be permitted to be licensed in any other form under the Act. Furthermore, neither the vendor nor any parent company or subsidiary are permitted to hold any ownership interest in an entity who is licensed under the Act. And so what that means is it prohibits the companies themselves from creating secondary monitoring companies to monitor themselves. And so we've heard that they have done that, and not necessarily with nefarious intent, but no doubt to have real-time analytics on their machines that then can be utilized for other monitoring purposes. But for what we're doing, we want analytics on the machines for our purposes of regulating the industry and ensuring compliance. And so that ensures that the companies themselves are not the companies doing the monitoring. So it's a conflict of interest provision.
So, and you're specifying that those are for companies that are retained or by the commission
Correct.
to conduct independent auditing.
That's correct. I need a second. If
Second.
there is one. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Further discussion.
So my discussion is, where would we put that and where's the best insert location?
Looking right now.
Staff. Go ahead.
Yeah, Madam Chairman. Representative Nicholas, I would put it somewhere in that intro language of that subsection P. If adopted, I would probably restructure that entire subsection to improve clarity.
So Madam Chairman, I would suggest we proceed as a conceptual amendment, vote on it, and then we could have the chairs finalize that last language that you're comfortable with.
Yeah, for clarity to the committee and the public. So we're looking at page 3, about line 20, restructuring that section, adding that provision for conflict of interest. Further discussion?
Madam Chairman, would you just be able to email that, or do you have the citation to that statute in Nebraska?
I sure will. And I can read it again for purposes of clarity here. In order to avoid the appearance of any impropriety among cash device licensees, the successful bidder, which is the central monitoring system, will not be permitted to be licensed in any other form under the Act. Furthermore, neither the vendor nor any parent company or subsidiary are permitted to hold any ownership interest in an entity who is licensed under the Act. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Right, I have a further amendment and I mentioned this in our previous conversation and discussion on the bill draft, which is the removal of online gaming. So that really starts on page 1, lines 10 and 11, to strike the reference to 924-102B by creating the new paragraph. And this is all in reference to sports betting connected to central monitoring system. That technology does not actually exist yet. So I need a second.
Second.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. Does anyone want to have any further discussion on that? The downside of doing this, in my opinion, is that it's possible that that technology could exist in the future. And so the legislature would have to come back at that time and add it in. But at this point in time, there is no technology for that. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. That motion has passed. Further amendments on the bill? Seeing none. Question having been called. Roll call.
On 26 LSO 0124 as amended, Senator Beitman,
Aye.
Senator Crum,
Aye.
Senator Driscoll,
Aye.
Senator Guru,
Aye.
Senator Salazar,
Aye.
Representative Haroldson,
Aye.
Representative Nicholas,
Aye.
Representative Pendergraph,
No.
no. Representative Storer,
Aye.
Representative Wasserberger,
No.
Vice Chairman Bear,
No.
Chairman Nethercutt.
Aye.
Chairman Nethercutt, you have on the Senate side, 6 aye. On the House side, 3 aye, 3 no.
That motion has passed. That bill is adopted.
Madam Chairman, I
Oh,
believe that
hold on.
motion has failed.
Should we just quit for the day? I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. It's not debatable. All those in favor say aye. I'd like it documented that Representative Bear has moved to adjourn the meeting for the day. It's been seconded by I didn't move it. That failing for a second, we'll continue with our afternoon. I hope we're not committing any waste, fraud, or abuse. A lot of LSO time is here. A lot of legislative time is here. A lot of concerns on gaming, but we'll see if we can accomplish anything, huh? All right, let's move on to 26 LSO 129.
Yep, Madam Chairman, draft 0.4, this is 7-02 in the online meeting materials. This bill draft increases the amount of online sports wagering revenue that must be remitted to the state. The only change on the bill is page 2, line 1, striking 10% and inserting 20%. And then, Madam Chairman, just for perhaps the Select Committee's edification, just a note that the Joint Travel, Recreation, and Wildlife Committee has sponsored a bill draft to amend the disposition of that revenue. This would be page 2, lines 11. They have sponsored a bill that would split the revenue from going entirely to the general fund after the first 300,000 to be half and half general fund with the other half going for outdoor recreations. Just wanted to note that doesn't impact this bill at this point, and would be happy to answer any questions.
For a committee that didn't want to take up the topic, I guess they decided to dip into the funds. So any further discussion, committee?
Madam
Any
Chair?
questions for Mr. Fuller, Representative Nicholas?
Can we just get a rehash of how much income is coming in? What is this? What is the fiscal dollars and cents by taking this action?
Madam Chairman, I can answer that one, and if Director Laramendi wants to correct me, he's more than welcome to. The total tax that was achieved for 2024 for online sports wagering was 1.4 million. So that would be an additional 1.4.
Okay, public comment.
Hello, Madam Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for your time today. My name is Sarah Flosa, and I'm here on behalf of the Sports Betting Committee, which represents the nation's leading regulated online sports betting operators, which are comprised of FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM, Bet365, and Fanatics. Our member companies are proud to operate in Wyoming under the direct oversight of the Wyoming Gaming Commission, and we take that responsibility very seriously. Our companies have invested heavily in bringing safe, competitive, and responsible sports betting to the state. I'm here today to oppose the committee's proposal to double Wyoming's sports betting tax rate from 10% to 20%. This proposal would fundamentally weaken the legal market, harm consumers, and ultimately reduce, not increase, the revenue Wyoming receives. Legal online sports betting in Wyoming launched in September of 2021, just 4 years ago. And since then, operators have already paid significant licensing fees and invested millions of dollars in compliance systems, responsible gaming technology, and customer acquisition. The results speak for themselves. From July of 2024 through June of 2025, operators contributed $1.5 million in tax revenue to the state, and that number has just been climbing year after year. Tax revenue went up 26% from 2022 to 2023, and then another 32% from 2023 to 2024, growing from about $843,000 to more than $1.4 million. That steady upward trend shows the market is maturing and generating sustainable revenue. Doubling the tax rate at this stage risks choking off growth before it has the time to fully develop. Now let's talk about the economics. Sports betting is unfortunately very misunderstood as a highly profitable industry, and the reality is very different. Unlike other forms of gaming, where the house edge is much larger, sportsbook margins are razor thin and can fluctuate from month to month. On a $100 wager, a sportsbook keeps only $1.55 in profit. That's just a little over 1%. About 90 to 95% of all dollars wagered are paid back to customers as winnings. What's left over covers operating costs, marketing, and most importantly, taxes paid back to the state. If you double the tax rate, those thin margins disappear almost entirely. Operators will have no choice but to pass costs on to consumers through worse odds, fewer promotions, and reduced investment in customer service and responsible gaming tools. And when that happens, players don't just accept worse value. They migrate back to the illegal offshore website and their local bookies who pay no taxes, face no oversight, and can offer more attractive terms. It's important also to note that legal operators' biggest yeah, please.
Can you help me walk through how the illegal offsite betting can offer more attractive terms?
Sure. So I'll give you an example, for instance. So most online sports bettors, they shop their odds. So they'll go from operator to operator, whether it's FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM, and they will see who's offering better odds based on their whatever wager they're looking to place. So on an NFL game, you might see an odd that's minus 110 on one site, and then on another, minus 120. And for those who are not avid sports betting, don't partake in sports betting regularly, what that means is a minus 110, you would have to bet $110 in order to have a $100 profit. And a minus 120 would mean you would have to wager $120 in order to have that same $100 profit. So what would end up ultimately happening is folks from the legal market would have to then reduce those odds and maybe not offer such favorable ones. You know, they might offer the 120 as opposed to the 110. Whereas since there's no oversight and no taxes that are forced to be paid on the illegal sites, they can offer much more competitive odds, and then ultimately folks will transfer from the legal market back to the illegal market. And a large part of that is due because they look and feel exactly the same as the legal operators, but they have no consumer protections, and there's no what we call KYC, which is know your customer, which will vet to make sure that a bettor is of legal age through a very extensive process that we work with third-party verifiers to do, similar to the banking industry.
So it's actually not accurate to say that they're going to other platforms that are illegal because it's more beneficial, because the illegal sites are really fraudulent, essentially, right? They're providing false information because really they're criminal organizations located in like Malaysia, of which the consumer then has no recourse against that particular vendor. So it's not really in their best interest to do that. And the industry probably is struggling with clarifying who's a credible vendor versus who the illegal operators are. And it's a consumer information issue as opposed to a better platform because the tax is up a little bit by a margin. Correct?
Madam Chair, that's exactly correct. And I think maybe we're speaking a little apples to oranges here. So from a legal operator, you know, if we have to take on a 100% tax increase in a state, then we no longer will invest in those educational tools that will educate a consumer in the same way that we would in states that offer much more, you know, economical tax rates in order to properly educate consumers on the dangers that exist in working on an illegal site.
And can you share with me again what entity you're with?
Sure, I'm with the Sports Betting Alliance.
Okay, so the Sports Betting Alliance just dropped some money in Wyoming targeting consumers and our constituents, correct?
That is correct.
How much money was spent?
I would have to check.
I'd like that number.
Sure.
And I'd like to know how much money has been invested in informing consumers in the same way that you've informed our constituents about the threat of tax hikes, about how to verify a safe online betting platform. Because I haven't seen those ads with how quickly and adeptly you can communicate with the citizens of Wyoming on their handheld devices. So I'd like to see some more consumer protection from your industry, since you're willing to drop the cash in Wyoming.
Madam Chair, we can get you those numbers, but I will, just make one comment in that the folks who partake in sports betting in the state are regularly checked in with by extensive departments that exist specifically for not only consumer protection, but also responsible gaming. Each one of our member companies have entire departments that are dedicated to making sure that people who are playing on their platforms are playing in a way that is safe and responsible. And if an issue should arise, we have very stringent safeguards that are deployed in order to either get them off the platform or to get them the help that they need.
Senator Guru.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Sarah. I'm still trying to get a handle on this a little bit. Talking about different odds and different sites. Isn't that driven more by bettors betting on if all of us put $1,000 on, on a -120 versus a +120 on one side, that's what changes the number as much as, as much as anything else. And my question is, you're going to stick with the testimony that different platforms charge different odds to different states based on their tax formula, because I haven't seen any evidence of that. So, but that's your testimony. I just want to make sure we're real clear on that.
Madam Chair and Senator, yes, that is correct. It does influence how odds and lines are placed.
Representative Nicholas.
Thank you. So is this your handout?
That is.
So I'm curious because on this handout, there are basically 11 states that are either 20% or higher. And there's 11 states that are 10% or lower, correct?
Correct.
And so right now we're on that lowest quartile at 10%. So if we were going to go to the mean, we would actually go out to about 17 or 18%. Is that fair?
It's estimated 14.25, but that's fair.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else?
I mean, obviously, welcome any more questions.
Sure. I just have another question. Did you, and I'm sure you don't know this, but as part of your marketing campaign that's been deployed this last month, did you use the data that you have from your customer, from them using their handheld devices in order to gain that information for who to target?
Sure, Madam Chair. So each sports betting operator, they have a collection of information that they receive from their users where they can input different things like their email address. And we are able to, through extensive GeoComply, know where our users are located. So through their self-disclosed data that they provided to us, we were able to communicate to them what has been going on in the legislature.
And by self-disclosure, you mean downloading the app to bet? Is that correct?
No, by providing us with their email address.
I see. And then but their email address does not provide for geolocation data, correct?
That is correct. There is a separate monitoring system.
So tell me about that monitoring system that allows you to geolocate your customers.
Sure, Madam Chair. That's actually done in order to make sure that bettors are legally operating within the state, and that in states where sports betting is not legal, they are unable to access any platform. So what it does is if you download one of the many legal operating sites and you try to access a legal platform and you are located within a jurisdiction that does not legally allow online sports betting, you are prohibited from being able to access that platform.
Senator Crum.
Yes, I'm wondering if you could share with me I think the testimony was that if tax rate goes up, then the odds will change. I'm wondering if you could share with me then, like, I'm looking at the chart that was passed out here. The difference between, say, Arizona and Colorado, what Wyoming's proposal wouldn't make sense. So Ohio would be, and then say Illinois and New York, what the difference in odds would be between those, between somebody not basically paying very little tax to somebody paying in the middle to, what the difference in the odds are.
Madam Chair, Senator Crum, it's a little more, for lack of a better term, scientific than that, because it's also based on population size and number of bettors within a market. You know, I can't speak specifically on an exact wager that would be placed in Wyoming versus a wager that would be placed in Illinois. So to directly, you know, answer your question specific to the tax rate increase, it is something that, because there are much less favorable economic environment in Wyoming at a 20% tax rate than a 10% tax rate, the customer or the operators have to consider that when they are making their additional investments in the state. And a large part of that is through promos that many sports bettors love to use and find very fun, as well as setting the lines.
Follow up. And I get that going forward, and that's hard to know today. So could you take, let's just pick a date, September 1st. And I know there's somebody's got records of this. So tell me what the odds, pick 3 or 4 games. It does, you know, the Denver Broncos playing on last Sunday against the Titans and the Chiefs, you know, game, and tell me on September 1st what the odd difference were getting using, say, Colorado and Arizona versus Ohio versus Illinois, New York, what those odds were. Somebody knows those numbers.
Madam Chair, Senator, I mean, I could come back with you with those odds. I don't have them right in front of me.
Madam Chair.
I'll yield.
Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A quick question, educational tools. What educational tools are you deploying for your customers in Wyoming so that they don't go to those Malaysian sites that are nefarious? You had talked about educational tools and educating your customers. What tools are you using?
Madam Chair, Senator, thank you for your question. So each operator has extensive contact with all of their consumers. So there are regular check-ins, and one of those consists of explaining the differences between an illegal operator and a legal operator. I couldn't speak to exactly what the verbiage is in with those, but we could come back with you on exactly how they are trying to educate. We also, and I think this is important to note, work with the AG's offices around the country and make sure that they have the tools and resources they need in order to go after the bad actors in each state. And we've seen significant success in states that take action against the illegal market in their state. And those that do not and stay complicit, they don't see any change in revenue to the state. So but I hope that answers your question. But if we need specifics on educational tools, we will gladly come back to you with that.
So Madam Chair, I have a question. So in, let's say, do you send out advertisements to folks in New York and Vermont and say, if you play this game online, you got to go play it in Arizona because you got a lot better chance of winning?
No, to Madam Chair, Representative. So, you know, marketing and advertising is done regionally. So, you know, we don't entice customers to cross state line to place wagers.
Madam Chair. So you just said, earlier we were talking about each state has a different, Wyoming has a low population, but I just heard, I think the odds are set regionally. So what region are we tied to?
Madam Chair, Senator, I said that the advertising is done regionally.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So earlier you talked about how you have a whole department in each of these companies that is dedicated to protecting the consumer. Things like protecting them from, I guess you kind of alluded to things, but I really didn't quite understand how far you go. Are there other states that are requiring this? Because it doesn't seem like Wyoming is requiring that you have such a department. Would you be doing it without a requirement? And are Wyoming consumers protected?
Madam Chair, Representative Bear. So it's a nuanced question. So the companies independently of state legislatures across the country set up their own responsible gaming departments that solely focus on innovation, figuring out ways to protect customers, because ultimately protecting them makes it sustainable in order to be able to continue to grow. State legislatures and different gaming commissions put in place responsible gaming requirements in which we are required to adhere to. And in addition to that, we also have our own responsible gaming departments that are constantly focused on innovation and making sure that we are protecting our customers. We also just did, I want to say it's roughly 2 weeks ago, a lengthy presentation to the interim gaming committee on all the efforts that our member companies are making in order to make sure that responsible gaming stays a top priority for all of the legal operators across the country.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So is there any protection that you guys can provide for someone who has not been paying their bills because they're gambling? I mean, I don't know how you would know that. How do you know if one of your customers is destroying their family or destroying their life by gambling? Or is that kind of outside of the purview of their departments?
Madam Chair, Representative, so to the specific on how they're handling their personal finances, no, but what we do track is their gaming habits and any type of change, say they go from placing maybe $15, $20 on a sporting event per week, and all of a sudden they up that to $200 a week, and it's pretty outside of their typical behavior. We will then prompt them through the application, what we call is a check-in, just say like, hey, we want to make sure, we've noticed that your betting habit has changed. Is there anything to do with that? They then have to respond. They can say, no, it's fine. But then we flag that in our monitoring system, and we make sure to check back in with them. If we see that it continues to progress, all of the operators that we represent have the ability to then remove that player from the site if we think that it's escalated to a point where they are no longer gaming responsibly on the platform.
Is it possible that you're also marketing differently to those gamers once you realize that they're more interested in gaming?
Madam Chair, Representative, I'm not exactly sure if I fully understand the question.
So, if I may clarify.
Yeah.
So for instance, you gave the example of they moved from $20 to $200 and you're not sure, but you realize that, hey, they're doing more business with you. I know that if I mention that I'd like to look at something or I search something online, suddenly I get 20 ads for that item. So is it possible that these companies are at the same time they're checking in on them for responsible gaming, that they're also marketing to them to get more of their gaming dollars?
Got it. I understand the question. So the responsible gaming departments that exist within all of the legal operators, they consistently communicate with both their marketing team, advertising teams in order to prevent something like that to happen, right? If it's been flagged that we think that a player is potentially having an issue, then we will make sure that they don't receive, kind of like the promotional credits or emails or stuff when they're being monitored as potentially having an issue. And all of those departments communicate amongst each other.
In Wyoming, do Wyoming users have any financial limits on how much they can bet?
Madam Chair, I don't believe that there are set in statute limits, but they can set personal limits on their platforms. So
do your customers, do the online sports betting platforms set, does FanDuel and et cetera have any financial limits for Wyoming bettors? For example, if I were to download the app, I'm not asking you what's in our statutes.
Sure.
I'm asking you to tell me what your customers' policies are. So if I download the FanDuel app right now, could I bet $500,000 today?
I mean, I think there is a number where if a wager is placed and you're not like a VIP or someone who's typically wagered, it would be flagged. I think it would be more flagged as fraud, and our fraud department would get involved and prevent that wager from being placed.
So there's no financial limit. It's just a concern whether or not you're actually receiving $500,000 of my checkbook. So the answer is no, correct?
Well, the answer is nuanced, but for the sake of this argument, no.
Is there any restriction for Wyoming users for what would be a cooling off period? Let's say that because you know everything about that user because of their consent to use the app on their phone, that they've been playing for 7 hours. Can you shut it off? Will you
Yes.
shut it off? Is there currently a policy in place for Wyoming users to shut it off after a particular period of time?
Madam Chair, there is. So what typically happens if we see that a player is, playing for an extended period of time, or if, say, all of a sudden at 4 a.m. they're betting on ping pong in Japan, that's obviously an issue. So what will happen is, like I said, we prompt them through the application, and sometimes we'll prompt them through email as well, so to connect with them on more than one. But we like to meet them where they're at, which is what we say in the application. We will tell them the exact amount of time that they've been spending on the application. We will, notify them of our concern. And then if it gets to a point where it escalates and we think that they are no longer able to responsibly gamble within the application, we will remove them from the application.
What is that time period?
I would have to get back to you on the exact time period.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just out of curiosity, how frequently does that happen where you guys see a new pattern and betting, and then you have to go through that screening process with your customers?
Madam Chair, Representative, it's less common than one would think. We actually see around 1 to 2% of folks have an issue of problem gambling when it comes to online sports betting and iGaming. I would have to get back to you on the exact numbers. I don't know if that's readily available right now on how many interventions each operator has done, but it's not a frequent occurrence where it's escalated to the point where they think an operator needs to be removed. But I do know that regardless of who is playing, all customers have what's called My Stat Sheet, where they get regular reports on exactly how much they've wagered, how much they've lost, and how much time they've spent on the application. And that goes to all customers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And have you guys done that here in the state of Wyoming? Looked at statistics if it's the same as what your national level, that 1 to 2% is? Do you know if it's slightly more, slightly less? Do you have those details specifically for Wyoming?
Madam Chair, Representative, I don't have them specific for Wyoming, but we could follow up with you.
Madam Chair, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Couple of different angles here. First of all, you guys are taxed your clients are taxed at 10%, where we have local small businesses in Wyoming in the skills game sphere that pay double. And they're not claiming that their customers are going to go out and, find a dark web bingo game or something going on. I don't know, at the town hall or something. So that raises red flags to me, number one. And number two, from the research I'm doing online, is the amount of money spent on marketing and promotions from your clients far exceeds the taxes paid. So it's kind of like the analogy of a drug dealer giving a couple free samples to get you hooked. And then once you're hooked, then you're in, right? So that's the business model. Offer these promotions, market the hell out of it, get people in. And you're saying if we raise taxes a little bit to equalize you with skills-based gaming to make our tax system more fair in Wyoming, that would be, you know, cut into your sales and marketing and promo budget. Your thoughts on that?
Madam Chair, Senator Whiteman. To go back to one of the previous points I made, the margins in sports betting are very different than the margins on skill games. And the same could be said for iGaming, which I know is not legal in Wyoming, but if the state was looking to generate significant revenue, iGaming generates 6 to 10x on what online sports betting does for tax revenue. To answer your question on you know, the illegal market, I know I said this in my testimony prior, the operator's biggest competition, and it's why we kind of are able to work together here, is not other operators, not other legal regulated operators. It is the illegal market. So whether, you know, they always exist unless action is taken against them. And that's why we've worked with Attorney General's offices around the state, around the country, excuse me. So, I mean, I'm not sure if I'm exactly answering your question, but, you know, specific to the margins, when you're trying to compare HHR, skill games, sports betting, all forms of gaming are very, very different. The house edge is very, very different. And that's why it is more of a direct hit that will be eventually gone back to the consumers. On promotional play, you know, that is what is not considered exactly as revenue. So an analogy I like to use is, you know, for my birthday, I get a card from Macy's and they say you have a $10 credit where you can go and you can buy something and, you know, treat yourself or whatever the case may be. I go, I buy myself a sweater, I use that $10 and, you know, I come home with the sweater. That's very similar to how promotions work for legal regulated online sports bettors. So they play, they get a $10 free play, they're able to go place a wager. If they win, that's great, that's cash back to them. If not, it's kind of, you know, a wash, will you say. So it is a more, you know, complicated than a black and white situation.
When do you think I can get that information on how much you've spent in the state of Wyoming marketing on this particular meeting?
When do I think I can get it for you?
Mm-hmm. Maybe you could text somebody and get it back to me before 5?
Potentially.
Good, I look forward to that. Any additional questions? All right, seeing none, further public comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Committee, back to you. It's been moved by Representative Nicholas. Seconded by Senator Guru. Further discussion?
Madam Chair,
Senator Crum?
I don't know how this fits in but I think we ought to table this bill. I don't have the information, just listen to the testimony here, to make a decision. If I have to make a decision now, I'm going to vote no, just for the fact I don't have the information. By tabling the bill, I'm not saying that we should not raise to 20%. I just don't have the information. There was way too many unanswered questions here to make a decision. So I think this bill ought to be tabled.
Senator Guru?
To the bringer, are you say tabling to the next meeting? Or are you tabling to a date specific? Or just
to the next meeting?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So, you know, I'm aware of the assessment on this issue for all of gaming concerning this committee, the Wyoming Legislature. I do think that the failure to pass any meaningful legislation concerning gaming in the last 2 years in any committee is of paramount concern to the people of Wyoming and to myself. I don't know what to do about it. But each time a bill fails inexplicably, both chambers, all committees. And so, no, I don't think we should have another meeting to discuss this. I think it's wasteful, knowing that it's so unproductive. And so maybe Wyoming needs a cooling off period for things to get worse, for the situation to be obviously out of hand. And no offense to the Gaming Commission, but the legislature is not a partner with you on this, right? We are stalling out. And so, yeah, I mean, it's not, I don't support having another meeting to discuss gaming revenues or any other gaming topic. Because for the last 2-3 years of my legislative career, in all the committees I've been in dealing with gaming, of which there's a lot, none have come into law. Continuing to do the same thing that we've done doesn't seem to be wise for the people of Wyoming. I know what the afternoon holds. Big sigh of relief for all the operators in the room. Nothing's going to look any differently for you for 2026. Yay, lots of predictability in your bottom line. I'm not sure that's good for the people of Wyoming. I'm not sure that's a good mark for the Wyoming legislature, but that's where we stand. So no, I don't intend on having another meeting on this topic.
So Madam Chair.
Representative Nicholas.
Yeah, with regards to the motion to table, I oppose it. The real question to me is what the number is, because if you just take their chart, and we're only talking about $1.4 million additional per year, assuming that, and we're at 20%, we're equivalent to 8 other states, and then 5 other states are higher. And if we go down 1%, then if we're at 17 or 18, we're actually exactly in the mean. So it seems to me we ought to do something. It's just the number, because whatever information we get is not going to change. It's going to be worth $200,000 or $300,000 at the most. But I think the general perspective is we should get as much as we can, but still be reasonable and fair overall compared to the market. And so I think 20% works, but if it doesn't, then probably 17% would be exactly the mean, if that's what we choose to do. So I don't think we need to table. I don't know what information we're going to get that's going to change us between 17 and 20%. So I would just speak in opposed to the motion.
Representative Bear.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I too would be opposed to tabling this bill. I think it's time to make a decision. And for my part, I'm opposed to these bills that are going to raise taxes on this particular thing. I've been opposed to gambling, period. And we have passed some bills in the last few years, and those bills have been to open the door to more gambling. I've been opposed to every one of those. But now that the door is open, we're trying to get it under control, but we're trying to get it under control with taxation. I disagree with the previous speaker that we should be trying to get equal amount of taxing as other states. I'm in no rush to be the high tax leader of the states. But I will say this, I also don't believe that this particular sin tax is going to fix the problem. I think what it is it's going to create a problem for the state of Wyoming. We're going to generate more revenue. It's clearly something that many of my colleagues are hungry to get more revenue. And what does more revenue do? It makes the state more dependent on this type of activity. I think that there may be a future where the state of Wyoming is actually promoting gambling to maintain our revenues. So therefore, I'm against the bill and against the motion.
Yeah, so not surprised to hear that statement. And I don't think this committee was ever tasked with raising revenue. What the Capital Finance and Investment Committee did was to understand what our gaming revenues are and to ask, as we looked at what those revenues are, to understand, are they being pooled in investment accounts that are appropriate for Wyoming, to say, hey, are we receiving revenue that is comparable to other states with similar gaming industries? That's what we were doing. And then out-of-state advocacy organizations started campaigning as opposed to understanding what the committee was doing. which was putting placeholders in based on information from LSO that we asked them to do to see, is Wyoming receiving a fair amount of revenue consistent with other states that have the industry in place? Because as we know, the industry has impacts on local towns and governments. And those of us that are hungry for revenue, which of course is an unfair statement, but I have heard that we have a structural deficit from some of my other members, and we need to understand how we're going to fund roads, that exploring how much revenue we're receiving from this new and growing industry and whether or not what we're receiving is consistent with other states is actually part of our due diligence as a legislative body. And so no, there'll be no tax increases today. And understanding that this bill and these bills in the afternoon would have to originate in the House, and there's no support from it with the House side of this committee, I think the matter is done. So I'm going to call the question on this motion, and we'll maybe dispose of the afternoon by 4 p.m., shall we? All those in favor say aye. Oh, it's a roll call. Roll call. So there was a,
Nobody second.
so a motion to table is undebatable, but there was a pending motion on the floor with the second. And so we have to dispose of the first motion from Representative Nicholas, seconded by Senator Grew. So we're going to have to do a roll call vote on this particular bill to dispose of it. Roll call.
On 26 LSO 0129, Senator Beitman. Senator Crum.
No.
Senator Driscoll.
No.
Senator Grew.
Aye.
Senator Salazar.
No.
Representative Haroldson.
No.
Representative Nicholas.
Aye.
Representative Pendergraph.
No.
Representative Storr. Representative Wasserberger.
No.
Vice Chairman Bear.
No.
Chairman Nethercott.
No.
Chairman Nethercott, you have on the Senate side, 1 aye, 5 no. On the House side, 2 aye, 4 no.
Okay, to be consistent with our agenda to be adjourned by 4 o'clock, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
It's been moved by Representative Nicholas. Can I get a second? Seconded by Representative Pendergraph. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say no.
No.
That motion has passed. This meeting is adjourned.